The Incubus waited for the Alpha's touch. Omegaverse Werewolf Shifter Romance Audiobook. Written by Reinhardt. Chapter 1: The Whore and the Wolf. The first rule of surviving the Midfall Hall was simple. Smile like sin, lie like silk, and never, ever, come without claws. Mireth had all three. He moved like smoke through the crimson-lit ballroom. Every step a seduction. Every sway of his hips a challenge wrapped in satin. Candlelight caressed the soft angles of his body, highlighting the shadows beneath his cheekbones, the exposed slope of his throat, the deep V of his black silk robes that clung like wet paint. They were watching him. Of course they were. Dozens of alphas from the warring bloodlines lined the edges of the great hall. Their noses flared, their pupils sharp with heat. The legacy of the wolf was written in bones and teeth. But tonight, their eyes were all on flesh. His flesh. Mireth smiled, tongue tracing the curve of his upper lip. His deep violet hair spilled over one shoulder like wine on dark marble. He twisted in rhythm to the drums, barefoot across the obsidian floor, arms lifted above his head, fingers beckoning the hungriest wolves in the kingdom. One by one they succumbed. Lord Fenric of the Iron Fang clan licked his lips and stepped forward. Mireth's fingers brushed his collarbone in passing. Lord Elrath of Broken Hollow chuckled low and reached for his waist. Mireth let him touch, for just a breath, before sliding away. Even Varen Sarash, heir to the Night Howl throne and tonight's host, had leaned back in his grand seat, smiling, cup untouched, nostrils flared. "You're not dancing," Mireth purred as he circled him. "I'm watching," Varen said, voice smooth as blood over glass. "And deciding." "Deciding what?" Mireth arched an eyebrow. "If I want to taste you now or unwrap you later." Mireth laughed, light, musical, dangerous. "You'd be wise to savor the present, my lord. I don't always stay long." Around them the music swelled, eyes blurred with lust. One Omega surrounded by the most dangerous alphas in the realm, and none of them questioned how he got there. Because they all thought they were the hunters, until he danced for the wolf who didn't move. He didn't see Kaelric Varanthorn enter. No one did. One moment the shadows beside the black column were empty, and the next, a figure stood there, unmoving, silent as frost. Kaelric wore no house colors, no sigils, just black leathers, black gloves, black blades strapped against his spine. His eyes were not gold like most alphas, but a cold steel gray, lit from within like moonlight on a dead lake. Mireth stumbled. It was barely a hitch, a missed beat, a misstep in an otherwise flawless seduction, but it was enough. He caught himself quickly, flipping into a slower spin, making the stumble look intentional. But inside, something shifted. A chill he hadn't felt in years crawled up his spine. The White Wolf, the Butcher of Black Hollow, Kaelric of Varanthorn. He'd heard the stories. Everyone had. He slaughtered his father at 17, claimed a territory 3 times his clan's, and turned away every alliance offered since. Cold, disgraced, ruthless, untouchable. That last part Mireth had never believed. Until now. He danced closer, careful now, slower. The crowd thinned near Kaelric. Not one alpha dared stand beside him. The space around him was a void. Mireth stepped into it. "You don't look like the stories," he whispered, close enough now to catch the iron scent beneath Kaelric's skin. Kaelric turned his head, slowly, gaze dragging across Mireth's body like a blade. "I didn't come for the show," he said. "Then you came for the backstage," Mireth murmured, hand rising, slow, fingers brushing toward Kaelric's shoulder. "I can be very educational." The next moment was fast, quiet. A hand caught his wrist, not hard, not even fast, just precise, effortless. Then Kaelric's voice, low, without a flicker of desire. "Don't use dirty hands to touch me." The words landed sharper than claws. Mireth froze. Around them, the music slowed. Several alphas turned. A few laughed, nervous, surprised. One snorted like it was a joke. Mireth's eyes didn't move from Kaelric's. "You're not immune," Mireth whispered. "You're just pretending." Kaelric's lips curved. Not a smile. Something crueler. "They want you," he said, nodding toward the other alphas. "Because their cocks answer faster than their minds. I don't want you because I have the misfortune of respecting myself." Mireth recoiled like he'd been slapped. Kaelric dropped his wrist, already stepping back, already turning away. Like Mireth was something he'd scraped off his boot. "You'll regret that," Mireth said softly. Kaelric paused, turned his head. "I only regret arriving too late," he said. "Would have liked to see what you looked like while you were selling yourself." And then he walked away, just like that. No heat, no blood, no desire, only a shadow passing through flame. The ballroom flickered as if the fire dimmed for him. And Mireth stood there, alone now, breath ragged, heart crawling up his throat. For the first time in years, no one reached for him. And he didn't know why it mattered. Chapter 2: Eyes That Do Not Look Away. The party did not end when the music stopped. It only shifted to whispers in stone halls, to secrets spilled over half-drunk goblets, and to touches made in shadowed corners. Midfall Hall breathed deeper after midnight. Like the wolves within were shedding their fine clothes and slipping back into their real skins, sharp, feral, dangerous. Mireth lingered. He had changed out of his performance silks, now wrapped in a deep violet cloak that matched his hair and left his chest bare beneath the folds. The night air was cold in the courtyard, but he welcomed it, welcomed the chill like a hand at his throat, reminding him he was still wanted, still watched, and he caught the scent before the shape. Rich spice, faint wine, and something darker, an herb used in poisoncraft. Varen Sarash emerged from the colonnade like a serpent gliding through oil. "You vanished too early," Mireth said, not turning. "Missed the part where I pretended to enjoy being manhandled." Varen chuckled, low and indulgent. "I saw enough. You were unforgettable. I try." He didn't flinch when Varen's gloved fingers brushed down his spine, cool and curious. Mireth tilted his head, inviting the contact without committing to it. "I take it your chambers are too warm tonight," he murmured. Varen didn't answer. Instead, he motioned with a lazy flick toward the southern archway. "Walk with me, unless you're only trained to follow trails that end in beds." "I'm trained to follow power," Mireth said, stepping beside him. "And yours still smells ripe." They passed under vines of ash and night bloom, the garden perfumed and quiet except for the distant echo of a lute. Varen led him toward a side building. No guards, no light, just a narrow iron door already ajar. Inside, a private study. Old tomes, vials on racks, the scent of dry parchment and bitter root. Varen poured a dark liquor into 2 silver cups. Mireth took his without hesitation. "Tell me," he said after a sip, letting the burn warm his throat. "What exactly do you want from this succession? You're already the heir of Night Howl. You don't need the throne to hold power." "Varen Saturday, I want peace." Mireth raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you bleed poetry?" Varen swirled the cup. "Peace through unity. Unity through control. And control through remedies." He gestured to a black glass vial on the desk. Mireth leaned closer, sniffing. "Snake's tongue," he said, "from the hollow spine jungles. Banned in council. Only if discovered." Varen smiled, teeth very white. "A diluted dose softens aggression. Enough doses, and even a blood-mad alpha thinks like a tame merchant. And you'll feed it to the council? I already have. Mireth's fingers tightened slightly on his cup. He glanced toward the bookshelf. Movement, just a flicker, a breath of stillness where stillness shouldn't be. His instincts, honed sharper than blades, didn't miss it. Someone was listening. He turned back, lazy smile still in place. And what of Kaelric? Varen's expression cooled. He doesn't bend. He never has. Which means he'll have to break. How noble of you. It's not personal. Varen leaned forward. It's survival. For all of us. Mireth set his cup down, rose and crossed behind him, trailing fingers along the high back of the chair. You always did enjoy your poisons, he whispered near Varen's ear. Let me know if you ever need a new vessel to carry them. Varen turned to kiss him. Mireth allowed it for a moment, just enough for heat to rise, just enough for the unseen shadow in the wall to burn. Then he slipped away, back into the hall, back into the cold. He didn't have to look far. Kaelric was already there, by the balcony overlooking the garden, arms crossed, leaning like he had all night to waste. His eyes found Mireth's instantly. He didn't pretend he hadn't been listening. Jealous? Mireth asked sweetly. Kaelric didn't move. Of what? Mireth stepped closer. Of him. Of what he gets. What he touches. Varen touches corpses. You fit. Mireth smiled, but there was a crack in it this time. He circled Kaelric, predatory, slow. You heard everything, didn't you? Enough to know you're very good at opening mouths. Is that what bothers you? That I use what I have? Mireth said, voice silk over venom. Sorry I wasn't born with a sword between my legs like you, Alpha. Kaelric's eyes didn't flicker. You're not a weapon, he said. You're a lock. Mireth blinked. A what? Kaelric leaned in just enough that Mireth could smell the cold steel of his breath. You're a very noisy lock, he said, each word deliberate. Every key fits. Every hand tries. And you've convinced yourself that being opened is power. The slap was not physical, but it landed all the same. Mireth's throat tightened, but he wouldn't give Kaelric the satisfaction of flinching. You're a coward, he said. No, Kaelric replied. I just don't fuck garbage. Mireth's breath hitched. His nails curled into his palm. You want me, he said. Kaelric's smile was slight, and it hurt more than any snarl. You're confusing recognition with desire. I've seen shit before. Doesn't mean I want to roll in it. The silence that followed was cruel. Mireth looked away first. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. What would it take, then? What proof would make you believe I'm not just playing? Kaelric didn't hesitate. Die. Mireth laughed. Quiet. Bitter. Dramatic. Death has honesty in it, Kaelric said. You want to prove something to me? Give up what you used to survive. Burn it. Bleed it. Or stop pretending you're anything but a whore with good timing. Something in Mireth broke, quiet and sharp. He bit his lip hard. The skin split. Blood welled over his tongue, copper and shame. Kaelric watched the red drip over Mireth's chin. But his eyes, his damned eyes, never looked away. Chapter 3, Wolf Games. Burns' hard stank of ghosts. The battlefield turned trial ground had once been soaked in so much blood that even the wind carried echoes. Cracked bones still jutted from the scorched soil, and the blackened husks of siege towers loomed like burnt-out gods. A fitting place for the wolves to play at politics. Here, war was more than memory, it was stagecraft. Mireth walked beside Kaelric, cloaked in midnight silk, heels sinking slightly into the ash-streaked earth. He didn't speak. Not yet. His violet hair danced on the wind like a warning. The council had gathered. Circles of power. Teeth bared under the illusion of civility. Mirren Cave stood at the center, dressed in crimson-trimmed armor, his blade planted like a flag beside him. The famed bone burner, Alpha of the Ashfangs, whose rage had leveled 5 villages and left 2 of his own mates in the grave. He smiled when he saw Kaelric. It wasn't friendly. "My favorite traitor," Mirren drawled. "You came after all. I needed a reminder of how ugly failure smells," Kaelric replied. "Thanks for always providing." Several heads turned. Laughter followed, some genuine, some nervous. Mireth didn't smile. Mirren's eyes slid to him. "And what's this? Did you bring your little mascot to fetch your scraps?" Mireth stepped forward before Kaelric could speak. "I walk myself, thank you. But if you beg, I might let you carry my leash." Mirren's smirk twitched. "You're a walking infestation. How many alphas have you infected with that cursed blood?" "Enough," Mireth said, voice purring soft. "To know you're curious too." The tension cracked like lightning. He didn't wait for permission. He stepped close to Mirren, every motion deliberate. One pale finger reached up and brushed the edge of the alpha's throat, just barely grazing the scent gland nestled there. A calculated act. A whisper of skin against skin. It was enough. The air pulsed. Mirren flinched. Not visibly. Not with fear. But with something worse, reaction. His nostrils flared, pupils constricted. That precise, brutal face went tight around the jaw. Around them, the other council members stiffened. The scent of arousal, rank and shameful, licked the edges of the wind. Mireth smiled like a sin remembered. "You're bleeding through your teeth," he whispered. Kaelric's voice broke the moment in two. "That's enough." He didn't raise it, didn't shout. But even the wolves in the far ring turned to look. Kaelric strode forward, one hand gripping Mireth's shoulder and pulling him back, not roughly, but firmly. The contact lingered a moment longer than necessary. He turned his head to Mirren, eyes sharp as glass. "If you can't beat me in war, try not to lose to my pet in heat." Mirren's fists flexed. "You think this is strength? Parading a courtesan like he's your dagger?" Kaelric's smile was faint and terrible. "He's not a dagger. Daggers are made. He was born poison. And you keep him why? Sentiment." "No," Kaelric said. "So that men like you remember the difference between control and fear." The crowd hushed. Mireth said nothing. Not yet. But he turned, watching Kaelric's face. Not disgust. Not desire. Something worse. Distance. Later, the council's business blurred behind ritual speeches and challenges cast in mud and blood. They debated troop positioning, border disputes, ancient grievances repackaged as strategy. But nothing left the same mark as that moment, when an alpha nearly lost himself to a boy in violet. When it was done, and the sky bled into bruised twilight, Mireth followed Kaelric to the hill above the field. The white wolf stood there, wind tugging at his cloak. "You didn't have to step in," Mireth said. "You didn't have to humiliate him." "I didn't humiliate him," Mireth murmured, stepping close. "He did that himself." Kaelric turned, face unreadable. "You play games with wolves like you've never seen one rip open a throat." "I've seen worse." Mireth's eyes glinted. "And I've made better beg." Kaelric's lip curled. "You still think seduction is power, don't you?" Kaelric stepped in, suddenly close. His voice was ice against skin. "You think you're winning when they pant after you. You think the ache in their scent makes you strong. But you forget they recover. And you're still there, waiting for the next one." Mireth stared at him. "What are you afraid of?" Kaelric didn't answer. Mireth pressed closer. "That I might actually win? That I might make him kneel?" Kaelric's voice came low, cruel. "I'm afraid you're trying so hard to win, you'll forget which one of us is the prey." Mireth's throat bobbed. The silence was a blade between them. Then he smiled, slow and feral. "I've always wanted to be eaten," he whispered. Kaelric didn't flinch. But he didn't stay. He turned and walked away, boots crunching over ash and memory. Mireth stayed behind, the wind tangling his hair. His hands trembled, but his smile did not. Chapter 4. Bite Me, Alpha. The borderlands of Night Howl reeked of venom. Vines coiled like snakes over stone watchtowers, and the fog never lifted, not even at dawn. Mireth stood before the main gate, flanked by 2 guards who couldn't decide whether to leer or salute him. He made sure to smirk at both. "Tell Lord Varen," he said sweetly. "His entertainment has arrived." He wore red tonight, deep crimson robes that shimmered like blood in firelight, slit high to show thigh and shoulder, loose enough to fall with a single tug. His scent gland was laced with smoke leaf oil, heightening the undertones of lust and invitation. Every inch of him was crafted to provoke. And it worked. The guards didn't speak, only opened the door. Mireth walked through, hips loose, head high. He wasn't here for pleasure. He was here for poison. The tower's inner chambers were dim and humid. Braziers burned low, perfumed with the bitter tang of crushed fangs and powdered root. Ingredients in the serpent elixirs the Night Howl used to manipulate mind and body. One formula, in particular, was rumored to be capable of nullifying an alpha's scent entirely. Varen lounged on a stone chair draped in furs, shirt open to the navel, golden rings stacked up his fingers like claws. His eyes lit when Mireth entered. "You came after all," he said, rising. "I promised you a night," Mireth said. "You promised me a secret." Varen walked in a slow circle around him, trailing fingers along the curve of Mireth's waist. "And what will you give me for the recipe?" "Whatever you ask," Mireth said, voice a hushed purr. That was his first mistake, because Varen never asked. He pushed Mireth down onto the velvet-padded dais at the room's center and summoned 2 guards to watch. Mireth expected touch. He was ready for it. But Varen wanted something else. Humiliation. He poured a thick black vial onto Mireth's collarbone, letting it trail down his chest, sticky and stinking of venom and alcohol. Then he leaned in, licking it off slowly, like a beast feeding in public. "You want my formula?" Varen murmured against his skin. "Then show them how you beg." Laughter echoed in the chamber. Mireth didn't cry out. He didn't pull away. He smiled. He made it look like he liked it. That was his armor. That was the lie. Until the door slammed open. Varen rose half a second too late. Smoke grenades dropped. Shadows flooded the chamber. Screams. A blur of silver steel. One guard fell without a word. Throat split. Another reached for his weapon, only to crumple under the weight of a boot crushing his windpipe. Kaelric didn't speak. He moved like something loosed from a cage. He reached Mireth, yanked him off the dais, and wrapped a thick black cloak around him. Mireth barely caught a glimpse of the silver blade gleaming under Kaelric's arm before it slid back into its sheath, red-tipped. "Don't say a word," Kaelric muttered, not even glancing at him. Mireth didn't. He couldn't. He was still shaking by the time they reached the outer pass. The horses waited behind a bluff, tied and saddled. Kaelric shoved him onto one and mounted the other without comment. They rode until dawn. When they stopped, it was at a campfire hastily lit at the edge of the forest. Mireth still wore the cloak. His skin beneath it was sticky with blood, venom, and humiliation. Kaelric stood on the far side of the fire, back turned. "You shouldn't have been there," he said. "I got what I needed," Mireth replied. His voice cracked. "He gave me the vial. At what cost?" Mireth swallowed hard. "You don't care." Kaelric turned then, slow and sharp. If you make me kill again because of you, Mireth, he said, you'd better pray it's the last time. You could have left me. I considered it. Silence fell between them. Mireth curled the cloak tighter around himself. You act like I asked for this. You didn't stop it. I've stopped worse, he snapped. You think I'm new to shame? Kaelric crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He didn't touch Mireth, but his voice landed like a slap. You're not allowed to call this survival and pretend you're winning. You want to be dirt? Fine. But you don't get to drag me into it. You came. I shouldn't have. Then why did you? Kaelric didn't answer. Mireth stood slowly, cloak falling open just enough to show the bruises forming along his ribs. He met Kaelric's eyes. You're no hero, Kaelric. You didn't save me for me. No, Kaelric said. I saved you because no one else gets to ruin you. Mireth laughed. A broken, bitter sound. Control looks good on you, Alpha. Kaelric's hand twitched toward his sword, then stopped. Sit, he said coldly. Eat, and shut up. Mireth sat, wrapped in a killer's cloak, blood drying on his skin, lips cracked from biting them closed. He stared into the flames and whispered, You don't care about me. Not really. Kaelric didn't look at him. He shoved his sword into the earth beside the fire and said, without turning, Don't let me hear you call yourself a whore again. And something shifted. Not in the fire. Not in the night. In Mireth. Something raw. Something waking. Chapter 5, A Pact Signed in Flesh. Silver Hollow stood like a dagger embedded in the spine of the mountain. Its white spires reflected the sun in cruel glints, and its inner halls smelled of incense, old paper, and silence too absolute to be holy. Mireth didn't trust silence. He walked behind Lorcan Thane beneath archways carved with prayers in forgotten tongues. The high priest of the White Tower wore robes that shimmered with pearl-threaded symbols. Sun, Fong, Womb. His hair was bound in ceremonial braids, silver rings clicking softly as he moved. You are more beautiful than the prophecy suggested, Lorcan said without turning. I get that a lot, Mireth murmured. You mock what you don't understand, and you worship what you don't control. Lorcan finally stopped at the foot of the inner sanctum. The stone door rose twice a man's height, embossed with a serpent devouring its tail. This is a place of truth, Lorcan said. No lies pass its threshold. Good thing I prefer half-truths, Mireth said, and walked in anyway. The chamber pulsed, not with light or heat, but with something older, something watching. Pillars rose like trees from the ground, roots twisting through marble and bone. A pool of mercury like water shimmered in the center, still and deep. Mireth approached it. You were summoned, Lorcan said behind him. Not by me, not by the council, by the blood in your veins. The thing sleeping in your body wants to awaken. I'm not a shrine, Mireth muttered. You're a gate. He felt it then, a whisper beneath his skin, the thrum of something ancient calling through his bones. Not words, but hunger. The pool rippled without wind. His reflection in the surface twisted, his eyes blackened, teeth sharper, skin glowing faintly from within. His breath caught. You have the potential to channel the Oracle's vision, Lorcan said, to carry a will greater than any alphas. No more crawling for secrets between sheets. You could command. Miretha's hands trembled. He didn't know why. I'm not one of your saints, he said. No, Lorcan agreed. You're something older, and more dangerous. He stepped forward, holding out a blade, thin, silver, ritual carved. Blood seals the pact. Once cut, the hollow opens. Mireth reached for it. The door behind them slammed open. Kaelric stormed into the sanctum, boots loud against sacred stone. His cloak was dusty from the road, his eyes burning. "Don't," he growled. Mireth blinked. "What are you? How did you?" "Don't touch that knife." Lorcan did not flinch. "You interrupt a rite consecrated by the old tongue." "I don't speak in tongues," Kaelric snarled. "I speak in consequences." "This is bigger than you," Lorcan said, voice still calm. "He was chosen." Kaelric's gaze locked with Mireth's. "You think letting something inside you again will make you more than what you are?" Mireth stepped back. His hand still hovered near the blade. "I'm tired of being small," he whispered. "Of being used. This could change that." Kaelric walked up to him. Close. Too close. His voice dropped. "You think this is power? Channeling some dead thing's will? You don't need another master, Mireth. You need a fucking backbone." Mireth flinched. Lorcan moved between them. "If you interrupt the Oracle's awakening, Kaelric, you defy the very forces that govern our world." Kaelric turned on him with a sneer. "I don't believe in ghosts. My god bleeds and howls. Your god hides in mirrors." "You'll regret this," Lorcan said coldly. "No," Kaelric said. "He will." He looked at Mireth again. "Last chance. Walk out with me, or stay here and let them turn you into their puppet." Mireth looked at the blade, the pool, the whispers in his bones. He looked at Lorcan, cold, calm, too gentle. Then at Kaelric, wild, cruel, unwilling to yield. He stepped back. Kaelric grabbed his arm and yanked him toward the exit. Lorcan didn't stop them, but his voice followed, low and sharp. "You'd rather be a madman's trophy than a god's vessel?" Mireth paused in the threshold. He looked over his shoulder. "Tell me something," he said. "Would you have loved me if I'd obeyed?" Lorcan said nothing. Outside, in the wind, Kaelric shoved him against the tower wall. "You won't be safe now," Kaelric said. "You made a choice." Mireth stared at him, heart pounding. "You won't love me either," he whispered. Kaelric's eyes flared. "Love? I can't even look at you without wanting to break something." "Then break me," Mireth said. Kaelric didn't answer. He turned, sword slamming into the dirt beside the path. "Say that again," he said, voice trembling with restraint. "And I'll cut off your legs myself. See how far you crawl then." Behind them, the tower's lights went dark, and somewhere in the forest, the wolves began to howl. Chapter 6: Who Owns the Whore? The Iron Howl Arena was built for blood. A pit of stone and steel, surrounded by tiers of snarling wolves and spitting lords. It was where honor was sharpened on the bone of spectacle. Every inch of it echoed with the ghosts of those who'd bled for pride, or for nothing at all. Today, it wasn't war or vengeance that brought the clans here. It was Mireth. He stood in the center ring, skin bare to the ribs, draped in nothing but a strip of silken cloth and Kaelric's abandoned cloak, torn and soiled from travel, hanging too heavy on his frame. He wore it like a shroud and a crown. Varen lounged on the judge's dais, stroking the carved armrest of his seat like it was a lover's throat. "Shall we begin?" he drawled, voice smooth as serpent oil. "The council has requested clarity on ownership. After all, secrets are power, and power must be earned." Mireth tilted his head. "Ownership? Am I livestock now?" Mirren Cave rose beside him. "Don't be coy, Silverblood. You've sold every part of yourself already. We just want to see who's willing to pay in flesh." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Trial by combat," Mirren continued, drawing his blade. "Traditional terms. Winner claims the asset. Loser forfeits all rights. I nominate myself." "Objection," Varen said, raising a hand lazily. "You'll kill him too quickly, and that's no fun." "My objection is more personal," a voice said from the shadows of the southern gate. Kaelric stepped into the sun, every eye turning. His armor was unpolished steel, not ceremonial, scarred, unadorned, and splattered faintly with the memory of old blood. He did not look at Mireth. "I invoke my right to challenge," he said. Under clan Hallowcrest, murmurs erupted across the arena. "Kaelric," Mirren sneered. "This is beneath you." Kaelric's mouth curved into something cruel. "You'd prefer I stayed silent while you squabble over a body like dogs over a bone?" Mireth laughed, soft, brittle. "And here I thought you didn't care who fucked the whore." Kaelric still didn't look at him. "I don't. But if you're going to perform, I expect it done properly." That struck deeper than any blade. Varen smiled. "Very well. One fight. One prize." They cleared the arena. But Kaelric didn't draw a sword. He strode toward Mireth instead. "What are you doing?" Mireth whispered. Kaelric didn't answer. He reached forward and grabbed the knot of cloth at Mireth's hip, yanking it loose. The silk dropped, puddling at his feet. Gasps fluttered through the arena, but no one interrupted. Kaelric shoved him to the sand. "Get up," he barked. Mireth did not move. "Is this your idea of a fight?" Mireth hissed. "You wanted to be a spectacle," Kaelric snarled. "So here it is." He grabbed Mireth by the hair, dragging him upright. "You sit on laps and play puppet. Fine. But no more lies." Mireth trembled. Rage and shame tangled beneath his skin. "You're humiliating me. I'm showing them what happens when a weapon forgets it's not a toy." He shoved him again. Mireth hit the ground hard, sand biting into his skin. Laughter echoed above them. Someone whistled. "I've survived worse than you," Mireth spat, not rising. Kaelric crouched beside him, voice like venom. "You think this is about survival?" He leaned close, too close. "You want to control how they see you," he whispered. "But you can't control how I see you. That's why you hate me." Mireth's breath hitched. "I don't hate you," he said. Kaelric finally looked at him. "You should," he said. "Because I'm the only one who doesn't want to fuck you." A pause. Then Mireth moved. He lunged not to attack, but to kiss. Desperate, bruised, teeth clashing. Kaelric didn't return it. He shoved Mireth back hard. "Don't," he said. Mireth was panting, bleeding from the mouth now. His hair was tangled with grit and shame. His body trembled, but his voice cut clean. "Then what do you want from me?" he shouted. "You drag me into wars. You tear me down. You tell me not to whore, not to hope, not to want. What do you want, Kaelric?" Kaelric stood tall above him. "I want you silent," he said, "and far from me." He turned, walking to the edge of the arena. Behind him, Mireth collapsed to his knees. Blood ran from the corner of his mouth. He didn't smile this time. Chapter 7. Sleep with me or kill me. The cave walls breathed cold. Night in the highlands came without stars. Just the wind and the weight of rock pressing in like a second skin. Kaelric sat near the fire, armor half unbuckled, blade still within reach. He hadn't spoken since they left the arena. Not when Mireth staggered behind him barefoot. Not when he spat blood. Not when he finally fell silent. Mireth had known silence all his life. But this one was different. It wasn't disdain. It wasn't triumph. It was restraint, tighter than chains. He watched Kaelric across the fire. The man was carved in tension, shoulders hunched, hands still red from war, eyes shadowed like cliffs before the fall. Mireth hated the way his own pulse quickened watching him. Hated that he still wanted him. No, not just wanted. Needed. Needed to know the limits of Kaelric's refusal. Needed to shatter it. Because if Kaelric was the only man who wouldn't take him, then what the fuck was left of Mireth at all? The wind howled outside. He stood. Kaelric didn't move when he crossed the cave. Didn't flinch when Mireth shrugged off the blood-stained cloak. Just the war robe now, too long in the sleeves, gaping at the throat. No underlayers, no armor, nothing beneath. He climbed into Kaelric's bedroll like it was his own. Kaelric's voice came sharp, low. "Get out. I'm cold," Mireth said. "You can freeze for all I care." Mireth leaned in. The firelight painted his skin in gold and bruises. He placed one hand on Kaelric's chest. "Liar." Kaelric grabbed his wrist. Hard. "I'm not in the mood for games," he growled. Mireth shifted closer. Their thighs touched. His lips brushed Kaelric's ear. "This isn't a game. It's a dare." Kaelric turned his head. Their eyes met. Mireth let his smile bleed slow, dangerous. "Sleep with me," he whispered, "or kill me." The grip on his wrist tightened. Kaelric's face didn't change, but something in him snapped. He shoved Mireth back, the bedroll tangling between them. Mireth fell, spine slamming into the stone. Before he could speak, Kaelric was on top of him, knees pinning his thighs, hand fisted in the collar of that loose robe. "You think this is what you are?" Kaelric snarled, breath hot and ragged. "A mouth and a hole and a name that makes men forget they have wives?" Mireth's eyes didn't flinch. "I think," he whispered, "that you're dying to find out if I'm worth the myth." Kaelric slammed him back down. The air fled Mireth's lungs. "Maybe I am," Kaelric hissed, "but not like this." Mireth arched beneath him. "Then how?" Kaelric's voice dropped, almost trembling with fury. "Not when you're already crying." Mireth froze. He hadn't noticed, hadn't felt it, but there they were, tears hot and silent, cutting down his cheeks like betrayal. Kaelric's hand loosened. "I told you once," he said, quieter now. "I don't fuck things that don't know what they're worth." Mireth looked away. "You think I don't?" Kaelric sat back on his heels. "I think you do. That's why you offer it first, before anyone can ask." Mireth dragged the sleeve of the robe across his face. His voice cracked. "You think I don't have anything else to offer?" "I think," Kaelric said, standing, "you've never had to try." The bedroll was empty again. Mireth sat there, robe open, dignity peeled raw, and chest aching with something too close to grief. Kaelric turned his back. "I don't want to save you," he said, voice rough. "I just don't want to watch you bury yourself like a corpse every time you get scared." Mireth didn't answer. He lay down facing the wall, arms around his ribs like he could keep himself from unraveling. Neither of them slept. The fire cracked low, and somewhere in the darkness, a tear slid into Mireth's hair, unclaimed. Chapter 8: The Poison You Gave Me. The air in Serpent's Hollow was heavy with sweetness. Not the kind that comforted, but the kind that clung to skin like silk soaked in venom, laced with 1,000 unseen hooks. Mireth stood at the center of the poison den, every step a negotiation with memory. The floor pulsed faintly beneath his boots, etched with sigils that predated the clans, older than any wolf, deeper than desire. Purple mist curled from black braziers, coiling like breath from a predator's mouth. He'd been here once, years ago, with someone whose name had felt like sanctuary. Now it echoed like a threat. "Zivin," he whispered. The scent came before the figure did. Cinnamon and opium, gold and betrayal. Zivin stepped from the shadows. Not aged, not changed. The same curved mouth, the same dusk-toned skin, silver hair cascading like stolen moonlight. "You came," Zivin said softly, voice low as smoke. "You called. I never stopped." Mireth didn't answer. His body ached, shoulders tight from sleep denied, jaw sore from holding back too many things that had nothing to do with words. The last few nights with Kaelric had carved him open. Ziven wasn't a bomb. He was a blade dipped in perfume. "You look tired," Ziven murmured. "You should rest." "I don't rest well with knives in my bed." Ziven smiled. "No knives. Just old memories. Old pleasures." He stepped closer, and the air shifted. Miretha's throat tightened. He recognized the scent now, virile shane, the sacrificial fragrance. Banned by 3 high covens, said to awaken not lust, but surrender. It didn't make you want. It made you offer. His knees buckled. Ziven caught him gently. "I didn't come to hurt you," Ziven said. "Varen asked me to remind you who you are." "I know who I am," Mireth gasped. Ziven tilted his head. "Do you?" Mireth tried to push away, but his limbs felt slow, viscous. Heat pooled under his skin shamefully fast. "You think he cares for you?" Ziven whispered, fingers brushing down his collarbone. "That cold wolf with empty eyes?" Mireth opened his mouth, but no sound came. Ziven kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't cruel. It was the kind of kiss that said, "You were mine once, and under the skin you still are." Mireth moaned into it. The mist thickened. The braziers hissed. Something inside him cracked. Hands roamed. Cloth slipped. Ziven pressed against him, mouth at his neck now, canines brushing that vulnerable gland just under the ear. "You've never really been marked, have you?" he murmured. "Not truly. No one's claimed you." Miretha's breath came fast. "Don't. But you want it. You want to be wanted." Ziven bit. It wasn't deep. Not yet. But it was real. And it broke him. "No." The word tore out of him like a howl. Mireth shoved Ziven back with all his strength. The world spun. He staggered. Ziven reached again, confident, amused, already sure he'd won. That was when Mireth drew the blade. Small, silver, hidden in his sleeve since he was 14. He drove it into Ziven's side. Ziven gasped, eyes wide. "Not lethal, but enough." "You were my first," Mireth said, panting. "You don't get to be my last." Ziven crumpled. Mireth staggered to the edge of the room. Blood smeared his hands. His own, from the nails he'd dug into his palms. His scent was thick in the air, heat and panic and hurt. The sigils on the floor pulsed brighter now, reacting to the sacrifice. He stepped inside the central ring. He muttered the old words. Words his father had made him swear never to speak. The poison responded. The ring sealed. He collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. Inside the sigils, the scent could not escape. No one could reach him unless he willed it. Ziven stirred, groaning. Varen appeared then, from behind the far veil. Claws slow, deliberate. "You made it further than I expected," he said. "Get out," Mireth snarled. Varen only smiled. "You're very good at pretending you're still a person." "I am." "You're not. You're hunger wearing skin. And now you've locked yourself in a cage made of your own shame." "Charming." Mireth didn't look at him, didn't speak again. Varen turned. But before he left, he said softly, almost to himself, "He was never going to love you, you know. Wolves don't fall for what they can't leash." The veil fell behind him. Silence returned. Mireth sat there, legs curled, back against the stone. His robe clung with sweat and blood. His lips were torn, his breath shallow. "I'm not yours," he whispered. The scent of the virile shame still burned in his nose. "I'm not anyone's." But his voice broke, just a little, and his eyes were glowing again, violet fire, rimmed in tears. He stayed awake all night, guarding the cage he'd made with the last shreds of his will. Chapter 9. If I touch you, I'll break. The trees whispered in venom. Kaelric moved like a shadow through the serpentine woods, each breath strained through the toxin-laced air. His cloak was soaked at the hem, dragging black petals that had no name, only poison. He didn't look at the blood on his knuckles, didn't count the bodies he'd left behind, their throats open in tribute to his rage. All he saw was the scent trail. All he heard was the name he wouldn't let himself say. Mireth. The forest parted to reveal a circle of burned earth, seared with sigils that pulsed with infernal heat. The poison was thickest here, almost alive, coiling like limbs over the stones, hissing in defiance. Kaelric stepped into the sigils. They bit into his skin, tearing past wards, ignoring alpha bloodlines, clawing at bone and breath. But he kept walking through the ring, through the weight, until he saw the heap of violet and red at the far end of the circle. Mireth lay there, curled on his side, arms over his head, shirt clinging to his back with dried sweat and something darker. His lips were cracked open, eyes fluttering like moths. Kaelric knelt beside him. Mireth. No answer. He reached out, hesitant, and Mireth flinched. Don't, he whispered, voice raw, barely formed. Don't touch me. Kaelric froze. Mireth's hand came up, weak and trembling, grabbing a fistful of Kaelric's collar. His other hand dragged the edge of his robe around his shoulders, as if that would hide the wounds. I'm dirty, he croaked. Don't you see it? I let him. I almost. Kaelric grabbed his wrist. Firm, not rough. You didn't. Mireth laughed, the sound broken and too close to a sob. Because I stabbed him first? No, Kaelric said. Because you're still you. Mireth shook his head. You don't know what that means anymore. I know enough. Kaelric leaned down, forehead nearly brushing Mireth's. His voice dropped to something soft, dangerous in how quiet it was. You're not dirty, he said. You're just not afraid to bleed. That's your mistake. Mireth's eyes finally opened, wide, glassy, violet and shimmering. You came for me, he whispered. Kaelric didn't answer. He slid one arm under Mireth's knees, the other beneath his shoulders, and stood. The poison clawed at his lungs. He didn't stop. Mireth struggled weakly. You shouldn't carry me. It makes you look soft. Kaelric didn't look down. You think I care how I look? Mireth's hand curled against Kaelric's chest. Then why are you shaking? He asked, not smiling. Kaelric kept walking. The sigils dimmed behind them, the trap broken, the spell undone. The moonlight poured through the trees in ribbons of silver, cutting across their path like reminders of things they would never say. Halfway down the slope, Mireth coughed. Blood laced his lips. He looked up at Kaelric, cheeks flushed from fever and humiliation. Do you love me? Kaelric's jaw tightened. Mireth's voice cracked, desperate and too soft. You rescue me like it means something. You carry me like I matter. Just tell me. Is it? Kaelric's eyes were cold. I save you, he said, because I don't want anyone else to see how ugly you die. Mireth stared at him, and then he laughed. Quiet, breathless, terrible. It wasn't funny, but it was real. You're cruel, he said. So cruel. Kaelric didn't disagree. They reached the edge of the woods. The air thinned. The stars returned. Kaelric laid Mireth down beside a bank of moss and pulled off his own cloak, wrapping it around the smaller man's body like a second skin. Mireth watched him. You touch me like I'll break, he whispered. Kaelric's eyes met his. If I touch you, he said, I will. The wind moved between them, carrying the scent of ruin and something sweeter beneath it. Mireth turned his face into the cloak and said nothing more. But Kaelric sat beside him until the dawn came, and he never once looked away. Chapter 10. You should have left me. The Whitewood Temple loomed like an accusation carved in alabaster. It was too pure for the things Kaelric carried. He stepped into the threshold with Mireth in his arms, boots leaving streaks of red-black poison across pristine floors. The marble underfoot glowed with holy enchantment, reacting to the half-conscious bundle of sin clutched against his chest. The monks recoiled. One of them whispered a ward. Another dropped a vial. And then Lorcan Thane appeared at the top of the stairs, robes immaculate, expression carved from stone. "You bring that here?" he said, voice smooth as glass drawn across skin. "To the house of judgment?" Kaelric didn't slow. "I bring what bleeds. Judgment can wait." Mireth stirred against him, face half hidden in the shadow of Kaelric's shoulder. He didn't speak, but Kaelric felt his breath hitch. Lorcan's lips curled. "You think sanctuary will slow what's already begun?" Kaelric reached the altar and laid Mireth down across the ceremonial couch, the silver embroidery already darkening beneath the weight of him. "I think sanctuary is safer than war camps and poison pits," Kaelric said. Lorcan's eyes gleamed. "No, Kaelric, you think you are safer, that he is safer with you." Mireth blinked up at the ceiling. Kaelric turned. "Isn't he?" There was no answer, only the sound of incense sizzling in the farthest brazier. Kaelric left without ceremony. Mireth didn't watch him go. Later, Lorcan came alone. He knelt beside the couch, laying 2 fingers on Mireth's pulse, not to heal, but to measure. "It's beginning," he said. Mireth licked cracked lips. "Beginning to what?" "The change." Lorcan's voice was colder than the temple's stone. "The thing that was always inside you, the magic bred into your bloodline, the reason you were always meant to be used." Mireth tried to sit up. Pain lanced his ribs, but he did it anyway. "You talk like it was your plan. I talk like it was fate." Mireth smiled, slow and bitter. "And fate's just another word for chains, isn't it?" Lorcan didn't flinch. "You think you've tasted the worst of it, that we poisoned you with spells or lovers. But the truth is worse, Mireth. There was no poison." He leaned close. "The magic was yours, and you fed it, night after night, with every body you ever let inside." Mireth slapped him. The sound echoed through the holy silence. Lorcan stood, unfazed, blood beating on his cheek. "Even now," he said softly, "you feel it in your stomach, don't you? The warmth, the ache. That's no wound. That's the beginning." He walked away without looking back. When Kaelric returned, Mireth was sitting up, arms curled around his knees like a child pretending not to cry. "You should have left me there," he said. Kaelric didn't speak. Mireth looked up. "You should have let me die. If you hate me so much, if I disgust you, then why save me?" Kaelric's jaw flexed. "I never said I hated you." "You don't say anything," Mireth snapped. "You don't touch me. You don't mark me. You don't want me. But you follow me. You kill for me. You drag me out of every hell I find." He rose from the couch, hands clenched. "You act like a lover and a jailer in the same breath. So tell me, what do you want from me?" Kaelric's eyes were iron. "I want you to survive. That's not love." "No," Kaelric said, voice low. "That's mercy." Mireth shook his head, trembling. "No. Mercy would have been to let me rot, to let the sigils eat me, to let Zivin." Kaelric crossed the room in a breath and grabbed his chin, forcing Mireth to look up. "If he'd touched you again," Kaelric said, each word carved from rage, "I'd have buried his body inside out. Then why not touch me yourself?" Mireth spat. Kaelric's hands tightened, but not enough to hurt. "Because I'm trying not to be worse than them." They stared at each other. Mireth was the first to look away. He sagged, pulled from Kaelric's grip. "You're so busy trying not to be the villain," he whispered. You forgot how to be anything else. Kaelric didn't answer. He just moved closer again, slowly this time, like approaching a wounded animal. He reached out and wiped away the dried blood at the corner of Mireth's mouth with his thumb. You should rest, he said. Mireth's throat worked. You think rest will fix me? Kaelric turned toward the door. No, but it might remind you you're still human. Mireth laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. Cracked at the edges. Still human, he echoed. That's funny. Coming from a man who howls at the moon and sleeps with a sword. Kaelric paused. Then, I don't sleep. He walked out, and Mireth sat alone under the cold glow of temple flame, whispering to himself, I should have died. But he hadn't, and that somehow was worse. Chapter 11, A Body Fit for Sacrifice. The ceremonial chamber beneath silver hollow smelled of sanctity and something far older, wax, ash, and the bitter tang of dried blood long scrubbed from marble. Mireth stood in its center, bare feet on cold etched stone, arms wrapped in silk that bound tighter the more he struggled. He was adorned like an offering, not a guest. Silver cords wove around his torso like vines, his violet hair combed and braided with symbols he couldn't read. Every inch of him had been washed, perfumed, prepared. It was a ritual bath, they'd told him. A cleansing. But there was no filth on him, except the kind they pretended not to crave. Around the chamber's perimeter stood the wolves of the council, draped in ceremonial robes and polite silence. Lorcan stood at the head of the formation, hands raised before an altar that glowed faintly with divine runes. His voice, calm and smooth, chanted in the old tongue, words of binding, of surrender, of sacrifice. Mireth's throat burned with every breath. He turned, seeking eyes, any eyes, that would meet his and pull him out of this. None did. Even the emissary from his mother's people stood motionless, amber eyes cool, arms folded in neutral approval. Zivan was among them too, lounging like a bored priest on the outer stairs, hood half drawn, face shadowed. He didn't flinch, didn't speak. When their eyes finally met, Mireth whispered, Help me. Zivan only shook his head. You were made for this, he said, voice void of warmth. You're not being punished. You're fulfilling what you are. A shiver laced down Mireth's spine. The cords tugged tighter. No, I didn't ask for this, he hissed, twisting against the silk. You don't get to decide who I become. Lorcan's voice rose, harmonizing with the echoing hum of power that began to tremble through the hall. The blood of demon and beast joined in flesh. The vessel prepared. The door to power cracked open. The runes beneath Mireth's feet ignited. Heat flooded his spine. His sense spiked, sweet, sharp, overwhelming. Omegan instinct flared and buckled, torn between need and nausea. The pain came next, hot, curling under his skin, blooming behind his eyes. His body remembered something ancient. Not sex. Incubation. Mireth screamed. It ripped out of him without dignity, a raw animal sound. But still, he didn't fall. He clenched his teeth. He writhed, but he didn't beg. I won't give you that, he growled through blood-stained lips. His knees hit the stone, but he kept his spine straight. His fingers clawed at the silk bindings, tearing skin and leaving red trails down his thighs. Lorcan stepped closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. You can't stop what's already growing. I'll kill it, Mireth spat. You can't kill what was never born. Lorcan touched his shoulder, fingers cool and reverent. It's not a child. It's power. And you are the crucible. Mireth snarled and twisted, desperate to fling him off. The heat turned to fire. His bones ached, organs tightening like fists. Something inside him shifted, no longer just discomfort, but movement. curling, twitching. His scent flooded the room. The alphas around the chamber flinched, hands twitching at their sides. Some inhaled like beasts. None stepped forward. Mireth's nails broke on the marble. "I said no." A thin line of blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. He bit down on his own tongue to silence the scream, and the copper taste grounded him for one last moment of choice. He threw his head back and screamed, not from pain, but defiance. "Not God, not destiny. Just you want me broken." He arched as the runes surged brighter, light searing across the chamber. And then, the doors blew apart. The explosion was lightless. A wave of brute force cracked through the wall of the temple like a cannon, shattering sigils, toppling the outer rings of the altar. Kaelric stepped through the smoke and stone, sword drawn, eyes red with fury. Lorcan staggered back, robe torn. "Stop him!" someone shouted. No one moved, not because they didn't want to, but because Kaelric's presence was no longer political. It was primordial. He wasn't a man or a wolf or even a leader. He was vengeance incarnate. Kaelric crossed the distance in 5 strides. His blade sliced through the final rune circle anchoring Mireth in place. The glow fractured. The bindings fell. Mireth collapsed into his arms. But his body still burned. Magic still pulsed through him like a second heartbeat. Kaelric looked down at the bruised face, the wrecked lips, the bared skin still marked by ceremonial ink and claw scratches from his own self-harm. Mireth opened one bloodshot eye. "I told you to let me die." Kaelric exhaled. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "I'm here to end them." And behind him, the wolves began to realize they had not summoned a vessel. They had called down a reaper. Chapter 12 burned this temple down. The smoke rose before the screams did. Kaelric did not run. He strode through the flaming corridors of the silver hollow temple like a wolf through winter mist, silent, precise, and utterly unafraid. In his arms, Mireth's body hung limp, his skin far too cold for a creature burning from the inside out. The silk ceremonial robes trailed behind them, blackened at the hem, sticking to Mireth's fevered skin. His lips were parted in unconscious murmurs, half curses, half prayers. Kaelric listened to neither. Behind them, the sacred chamber crackled and fell. Statues of long-forgotten gods crumbled under the weight of fire, heat distorting their once benevolent faces into grotesque grins. Holy scrolls curled into ash. He passed an acolyte in the corridor. The boy raised a spear. Kaelric did not pause. The blade of his sword caught the torchlight once, and then the boy's body slumped against the stone wall, throat split clean. "Mercy!" someone croaked. Kaelric's voice was like a blade dragged through gravel. "Ask your god." He reached the western wing, where the cold air from the outer archway met the blistering heat of the burning temple. Here, Lorcan stood in wait, robes torn, hands still bleeding from where the runes had backlashed. "I warned you," Lorcan said, his voice low, too calm for the chaos behind him. "You interfere in the rights of gods, Kaelric. There are no places left for you now. Not in council, not in sanctuary, not even in legend." Kaelric didn't stop walking. Lorcan stepped forward. "Lay him down and walk away. I will let you leave with your life." Kaelric's laugh was a dry, cold thing. He didn't stop. "You think I came here to live?" Lorcan's eyes flared with divine energy. A low hum filled the air. The stone beneath Kaelric's boots glowed. It was a trap, one bound to the blood of gods and wolves. Kaelric didn't step around it. He stepped into it. The surge of power hit him like a tidal wave. Spiritual chains lashed through the air, catching his limbs, coiling around his throat, biting into the meat of his mind with a searing command. "Kneel." Mireth shuddered in his arms. Kaelric's knees didn't buckle. Lorcan's brow furrowed. "Why doesn't it work on you?" Kaelric bared his teeth, blood trickling from his ears, his eyes dripping like tears. "Because you made one mistake." Lorcan took a step back. "I'm not your creature," Kaelric snarled. "I was never blessed, and I never believed." With a roar, Kaelric surged forward, snapping the chains of spirit like old rope. Lorcan raised a hand, but it was too late. The tip of Kaelric's sword pierced through the priest's chest, driving into the altar behind him. Lorcan gasped. The light in his eyes flickered. His fingers twitched once, reaching toward Kaelric's face, not for salvation, but for understanding. Kaelric leaned close. "Your god didn't save you," he whispered, "and neither will I." He pulled the blade free. Lorcan collapsed, robes folding like wings beneath him. The flames followed Kaelric as he turned. By the time he reached the temple doors, the roof had begun to fall. The wolves outside, guards, priests, watchers, stood in stunned silence as Kaelric emerged, covered in blood and soot, carrying a fevered, broken thing in his arms that once dared to defy them all. He walked past them. No one stopped him. In the forest beyond, Kaelric knelt beneath a stone outcrop. Mireth still hadn't stirred. His skin had taken on a pale sheen, dotted with sweat. The fever was rising too soon, too fast. Whatever Lorcan had started hadn't been a symbolic ritual. It had awakened something. Kaelric laid him down on a blanket of moss, then bit into his own wrist. The blood welled fast and hot. He pried Mireth's mouth open. "Drink," he ordered, "or die." Mireth didn't move. Kaelric pressed the bleeding wrist to his lips. Still nothing. "You are not allowed to die," he growled. "Not now. Not after all this." He tilted Mireth's head back, forced a trickle past his tongue. The reaction was almost immediate. Mireth's throat convulsed. He choked, then coughed, then groaned, his hand twitching toward Kaelric's forearm with trembling fingers. "Shoo!" Kaelric muttered. "Don't speak. Don't move. You'll live." Mireth opened his eyes, glazed and wet. "You should have left me there," he rasped. Kaelric didn't reply. Mireth laughed, though it came out cracked. "You hate me too much to watch me burn. Is that it?" Kaelric met his gaze at last, unreadable. "No." "Then what?" Kaelric lowered his head, voice like gravel scraped against bone. "Because they made you something I can't touch. Something I shouldn't want." He gritted his teeth, blood still running down his arm. "And I want you anyway." Mireth blinked slowly, the corners of his mouth twitching, not into a smile, but something far more fragile. "You're the worst rescue I've ever had." Kaelric leaned close, brushing a fever-damp strand of hair from his forehead. "You're not rescued," he said quietly. "You're mine." Chapter 13, Wolves Eat Their Own. The snow had buried Ravencare in silence. White drifts crawled up the broken walls and buried the old banners of the Whitefang Wars like tombstones. Nothing breathed here except the wind, and the wolves who defied death to return. Kaelric stood at the broken parapet, frost in his hair, blood on his hands. Behind him, the tattered remnants of his men struggled to keep the fires alive. They'd been running for 3 days, and Mireth hadn't opened his eyes once. But Kaelric could hear him breathing in the tent. Still alive. Still burning. "Scouts sighted movement," one of the sentries said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "It's cave banners. They're here." Kaelric's lip curled. Of course it's him. The wind shifted. Mirrencave's army moved like a slow-coming storm over the ridge. Wolves in black armor. The mark of the bone brand glinted red on their pauldrons. Mirren didn't ride. He walked to the front, alone, letting his troops stay behind like a promise unspoken. He always had flair, Kaelric thought, and too much restraint for his own damn good. "You're a hard man to find," Mireth said, voice echoing through the hollow wind. "You're not supposed to find me," Kaelric replied. "You're supposed to lie like the rest of them. You set fire to a god, Kaelric. That sort of news runs fast. I set fire to a cage, and I'd do it again." Mireth exhaled steam into the cold. "You're not here to fight for justice. You're here because of him." Kaelric didn't respond. "You've killed council guards, burned temple walls, spat in Lorcan's face, and dragged your house name through ash for a whore with purple hair." Kaelric smiled then, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "You talk like you've never wanted to touch him." Mireth's jaw clenched. His soldiers tensed behind him. "He has no clan, Kaelric. No bloodline worth mentioning. He's a beast of pleasure, not purpose. And if we let you protect him, we let rot into the pack." Kaelric stepped forward. "Then come rip it out." Before the signal could be given, Kaelric moved. He was wind and blade carving through snow and bone. The first soldier fell without screaming. The second had his throat opened before his weapon cleared its sheath. Blood steamed in the frost. Mireth's forces staggered, but Kaelric never touched Mireth. Steel met steel once, just once, and Kaelric stepped back, eyes blazing. "You're not my enemy," he muttered. "Not yet." Mireth stared at him, war axe poised. He didn't strike. He didn't retreat. Inside the camp, Mireth stirred. The scent of blood had reached him. He was fever-hot, bones aching, body burning from within. The seal Kaelric had forced into his bloodstream with bite and blood was holding, barely. But the magic from Silver Hollow still whispered in his ears. They wanted him broken, willing, silent. He threw off the furs and stood. His body was a map of bruises and sigils. His feet left small red prints in the snow as he walked toward the voices outside. The cold air slammed into his lungs, biting, purifying. He stepped out just as Mireth's soldiers backed away from Kaelric's latest kill. And they saw him, naked, thin, marked, glowing with the kind of broken beauty only gods or demons bore. Someone gasped. Mireth walked up to Mireth, past the corpses, past Kaelric who didn't stop him. His eyes were fever bright. His mouth was curved like it always had been, in defiance. "If I'm a whore," he said clearly, "would you take me to wife?" Mireth's eyes narrowed. "You mock this. I am this." Mireth's voice cracked but did not fall. "And it terrifies you." No one moved. Kaelric's hand was bloodied to the elbow. He watched Mireth stand there like a prince over ruin, trembling and beautiful and on the brink of collapse. "You want him dead," Mireth said. "I can see it." Kaelric didn't deny it. "Sometimes." "Then finish it," Mireth said. "End it here. Save us all the war." But Kaelric didn't move. Mireth turned to Kaelric then. His skin was pale, his lips split, and he smiled. "Next time you want to kill me," he said softly, "at least kiss me first." He turned his back on them both. The camp watched him disappear back into the tent, back into the dark. But as he walked, Kaelric saw it, blood trickling down his chin. He'd bitten his tongue, hard, to stay standing, to speak, to bleed on his own terms. Kaelric turned back to Mireth. "Get off my mountain." Chapter 14, The Death of a Loyal Dog. The sky above Wormtree Pass was the color of old bone, heavy with clouds that hadn't yet decided whether to snow or storm. The wind stank of blood and pine resin. Horses were dead in the ravine. Wolves, too. Mireth's boots slid in the black mud as Kaelric half dragged him along the treacherous path. His body still hadn't recovered from the fire of the rite, and each step rattled something deeper loose. Behind them, Smoke twisted into the air where Ravencare had once stood. Now it was just another ruin, like so much else. "Stop pulling me," Mireth snapped, breath hitching. "I can walk." Kaelric didn't even look back. "Then walk faster. Unless you want to bleed here, too." Ahead, the trail narrowed into a natural choke point, Wormtree's mouth. Old roots clawed through the stone like grasping fingers, the trees above too ancient to care who killed who below. Jell was waiting for them there, flanked by a dozen of Kaelric's oldest fighters. His armor was stained and battered, eyes hollow with too many nights without sleep. But the moment he saw Kaelric, he saluted like they were still back at Whitefang Keep, not outlaws in their own land. "You're late," Jell said. "And bleeding." Kaelric gave a ghost of a smile. "That's how you know it's me." Jell's gaze flicked to Mireth. His expression shifted, just for a moment, but he didn't say the words everyone else had already said. Why him? Why risk everything for that? He just nodded once. "We scouted ahead. There's a break past the second ridge. We can make it if we move fast." Mireth leaned against a tree, panting. "You have to stop pretending I'm not a burden." "You're not," Jell said without hesitation. "You're a reason." Mireth blinked. He wasn't used to kindness from strangers, especially ones who'd die for Kaelric, especially ones who were about to. The first arrow came without sound. Jell's second in command crumpled to the dirt, a shaft through his throat. No warning, no honor. Then the howl came. Not wolves, men. Baron's men. Serash banners slid down the treeline like snakes. "Ambush!" someone screamed. Kaelric drew his blade, already charging into the fray before Mireth could blink. Jell shoved him behind the rocks, pressing something cold and metal into his hand. "Don't argue," Jell said. "Run west. Follow the creek. You'll hit the old hunting lodge. There's stashed rations. I'll cover." "No," Mireth said, voice shaking. "We can fight." "You're the fight," Jell said. "You're why he's doing all this." He looked over his shoulder. "And I'm why he still thinks it's worth it." Mireth shook his head, eyes wide. "You'll die." Jell smiled. "Been dying a long time. This is just me choosing the time." Another volley of arrows split the sky. Jell turned, and with a roar, leapt from cover, scent glands already swelling at his throat and wrists. Mireth knew the signs. He'd seen Omega's weaponized desire, but never like this. Not like this. Jell exploded into motion, ripping open the seals on his glands, and the scent that followed wasn't seduction. It was rage. A phenomenal scream that sent half the approaching wolves staggering in disarray, blinded by instinct and confusion. And then he ignited it. Mireth had only seconds to realize what Jell had done. The compounds in his bloodstream, modified for field suppression, could combust under sudden heat if the glands ruptured. And Jell had meant them to. The blast lit the trees. Fire and blood danced together in the snow. Mireth stumbled, screaming, trying to run toward it. Kaelric tackled him mid-stride, pinning him to the ground behind a fallen log. The explosion tore through the mountainside like a god's hand. "Let me go!" Mireth shrieked. "You don't get to hold me back while someone else dies for me." Again. Kaelric didn't answer. He held him there, shaking with exertion, jaw clenched tight enough to break bone. "He chose that," Kaelric growled. "Don't insult it by wasting it." "You let him die," Mireth sobbed. "You let him." Kaelric turned his face away. "If you go back there now, he died for nothing. You don't get to decide what's worth someone's death. Neither do you." The silence that followed hurt worse than the shouting. Mireth buried his face in his hands, fingers clawing at his own scalp like he could dig the grief out of his skull. Later, when the smoke had thinned and the screams faded, They moved on. Mireth didn't speak for hours. He didn't touch Kaelric. Didn't look at him. When they finally stopped, beneath the broken eaves of an abandoned chapel, Mireth sat down, back straight, hands limp in his lap. "Gel's last words," he said quietly, "were for me." Kaelric said nothing. He said, "If I don't live like you want me to live, he died for nothing." Kaelric turned toward him slowly. "I can give you the magic," Mireth whispered. "The child. The one they want. The thing in my blood. I can give it to you. Only you." Kaelric's eyes burned in the dark. "I don't want it. I can survive it. If I give it willingly. I don't want the monster." Kaelric's voice cracked for the first time. "I want you. And if you say that to me again like you're offering yourself to be used, I will break your damn legs and carry you until you forget how to offer anything at all." Mireth flinched, then smiled. Terrible, tired smile. "So you do want me," he said. "I want you alive. Same thing, isn't it?" "No," Kaelric said. "Not even close." The fire crackled between them. In the distance, wolves howled for the blood they hadn't claimed. Chapter 15, The Choice No One Asked For. The fog was thicker here. It moved like breath over bare skin, wet, clinging, sentient. Mireth had always hated this part of the land, not because it was dangerous, but because it didn't pretend not to be. The trees twisted in impossible shapes. The ground beneath their boots sucked at them like it had teeth. And the lake, Mireth Lake, never rippled, even when the wind howled. Simply watched. He didn't ask where Kaelric was taking him. He hadn't asked questions in hours. Not since Gel died screaming for him to live like Kaelric wants you to. Now he was just trying to stay upright, leaning into the pulse of power in his gut. Hot, thick, wrong. The magic was waking. The child that wasn't a child stirred. And Mireth could no longer tell where it ended and he began. They reached the lake as the last light bled out of the sky. The water glowed faintly with that unnatural sheen of Mireth Lake, like it was made of glass stretched thin over an open mouth. Kaelric didn't speak. He just stopped at the edge of the water, arms crossed, staring into the stillness like he might see God staring back. But it wasn't God who answered. The fog thickened, shifted. Then came the scent, jasmine and iron. A dozen figures stepped forward, silhouettes draped in obsidian silk and silver bone. Mireth knew them before he saw their faces. His people, or what remained of them. "You summoned us?" One of the incubi said, voice smooth as oil over fire. "Or rather, your blood did. We felt the flare of your nearing change." "I didn't call you," Mireth said flatly. "You did," another said. "Every time you begged for him to touch you and called it love." Mireth stiffened. Kaelric moved an inch closer but said nothing. "You are dying," the first incubus said, "or transforming. The outcome is yours to choose." He held up a small silver vial. The liquid inside shimmered with impossible color. "This will speed the awakening. Make the vessel stable. You will have your power. Your form. Your child." "I don't want a child," Mireth whispered. "You want to be wanted," another corrected. "And for once not as a whore, as a god." "Don't listen to them," Kaelric said, quiet and sharp. "This isn't strength. It's submission in prettier clothes." Mireth turned on him. "Submission?" he said, voice cracking. "Submission was me begging you for scraps of affection and being told I was too easy. Submission was me trying to die pretty so you'd carry my corpse like you carry your guilt." Kaelric's jaw clenched. His knuckles were white. "I tried to love you," Mireth said. "You didn't want love. You wanted obedience or nothing." "I wanted you free," Kaelric snapped. "Not owned by your trauma, not defined by what they turned you into." You think becoming this thing, this beautiful monster, is taking your power back. It's giving in. Mireth stepped closer. The vial had begun to glow in his palm. You won't touch me, he said. You won't kiss me. You won't even say my name like it matters. So tell me, Kaelric, what the fuck am I supposed to do with all this pain? Kaelric reached into his coat, drew out the blood sigil he'd carved for Mireth back at Whitewood, meant to suppress the worst of his transformations. He held it for a beat, then shattered it beneath his boot. Do what you want, Kaelric said. But don't you dare say I made you do it. Don't blame this on love. You want to destroy yourself. Do it on your own terms. He turned and walked away. The fog swallowed him. The incubi didn't speak. Mireth stood there, shaking. Then he turned toward the water. The lake welcomed him like a lover, silent, cold, unyielding. He stepped to the edge and dropped to his knees. The mirror surface rippled, and his reflection changed. It was still him, but taller, fangs longer, hair floating like it had a will of its own, eyes violet with no whites left at all. The thing inside him stared back, no longer trapped behind flesh. Free. You always thought you were seducing him, the mirror Mireth said. I was, Mireth whispered. No, the thing smiled. He was seducing you. You just couldn't admit that what you wanted wasn't pleasure. It was permission to be real. Tears gathered in Mireth's eyes. He hated them, hated how soft they made him feel. The reflection leaned closer, mouth brushing the glass. Drink the vial. Let me in. Mireth lifted the silver to his lips. The liquid slid down like silk, tasted like every hunger he'd ever tried to bury. Pain exploded across his chest. He arched back, screaming. The incubi formed a ring around him, chanting in a language older than lust, older than names. His skin peeled, then reformed. His scent thickened into something animal, poisonous, divine. The magic roared, and the mirror shattered. When Mireth opened his eyes, the reflection was gone. But he could feel it inside him now. Alive, waiting. He stood, unsteady, his limbs light as smoke and heavy as sin. He whispered, if falling brings me closer to him, I'll fall all the way down. From the shattered lake, black starlight rose into the sky. Far away, Kaelric felt the air shift, like a prayer gone wrong. He did not turn back. Not yet. Chapter 16. Let me be the whore you refused. The lake no longer reflected the sky. It had turned black sometime during the night, not dark with the absence of light, but black like ink spilled across the world, eating color, eating stars. Mireth stood at its edge, naked and still. As the moon broke open behind the clouds, silver light bleeding like judgment across the altar carved into stone. He did not shiver. The wind bit. The blood pool steamed. He stepped in, came to his ankles first, thick, hot, clinging. Blood older than names. Blood harvested from things that should not bleed. The surface moved with its own pulse, lapping up his legs like it wanted to be inside him. Around the stone basin stood the incubi, his kind, or what remained of them. Their hoods shimmered with runes etched in ash, and their mouths moved in chants no living tongue remembered. Each word was a blade cutting into the world, undoing boundaries. At the head of the altar stood Lorcan, not in body. His flesh was still trapped in the holy cities, chained by robes and politics. But his spirit, that they had summoned, he had no shadow, and his voice came from everywhere at once. You came willingly, he said, through the mouths of the priests. You do not beg to be saved. Mireth lifted his chin. No, you offer your body for rebirth. I offer my body, he repeated. You understand the pain will be endless. A pause. Then, I hope so. Lorcan's mouth curved. It wasn't quite a smile. It was what monsters did when they saw something worthy of being broken. Two incubi stepped forward. They carried the clavicle frame between them, a relic forged from gold and amethyst, shaped to spread a body wide without breaking the bones. Mireth did not resist. He climbed into it himself, his arms locked into place, legs parted, neck braced against the biting edge of the collar. He didn't look away, even when they drove the spikes in, even when they poured the fire in his veins, even when the first wave of god blood sank into his hips and made his back arch and his throat choke on a scream he refused to let out. Don't scream. Kaelric wouldn't scream. He bit down on the inside of his cheek so hard the flesh tore. Blood filled his mouth, sweet and thick and wrong. They burned incense at the edges of the circle, resins made from forbidden roots, spiced with sin. The smoke filled his lungs, curled behind his eyes. His cock ached from the chemical rush, but it wasn't lust, it was something else. Something split open and rabid. He knew this ritual. This wasn't purification. It was claiming. His body, his womb, such as it was being remade to house the unholy. They called it awakening. Felt like disintegration. He saw himself from above, then from below. Then the visions came. Kaelric, standing at the edge of the trees. Watching. Just watching. He wasn't real, Mireth knew that. But he was real enough. Kaelric's eyes in the vision were flat, cold, like a general surveying a ruined battlefield. You still want me? Mireth whispered, barely audible. The Kaelric in his head turned away. Mireth screamed. It wasn't from pain. Not just that. It was the scream of someone who had waited too long to be chosen, and finally understood he would never be. He heard Lorcan again, this time not in words, but in intention. You were born for this. The body was only a mask. The blood inside him began to churn. It wasn't metaphorical. It moved, coiled. The child. No, not a child. Not yet. Not ever. A thing. A hunger made flesh. Mireth wanted to reject it, wanted to spit it out, but instead he did the worst thing imaginable. He welcomed it. If he won't take me, he whispered to the thing moving in his gut, then I'll make the world take me. I'll make him kneel with the rest. The blood ignited. A ring of fire tore through the lake, boiling it into steam. The incubi stepped back, shielding their eyes. One of them fell to his knees, sobbing ecstasy and terror in equal measure. Mireth did not move. His body was still splayed on the clavicle frame, locked open, pinned like a sacrifice. But inside, the thing had begun. His skin glowed faintly, lines of heat carving through his flesh like sigils. His hair fanned out behind him, violet and silver, weightless in the rising wind. His breath came shallow, faster. The scent of him was wrong. It was sex and smoke and the last thing a dying man sees before the wolves come. He smiled, not because it was over, but because it wasn't. Let me be the whore you refused, he said, to the version of Kaelric in his head. Let me be the one who takes what you won't give. He felt the spell reach its apex, the moment before the magic locked into place. A heartbeat of choice, and he said, make me a weapon, then let go. The explosion flattened the trees. From the far ridge, Kaelric stood alone, unmoving. Smoke curled toward him, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of Mireth's pheromones. Changed, sharpened, terrifying. They no longer called for a mate. They called for worship. Behind Kaelric, his men shifted nervously. He didn't speak, didn't move, but his jaw clenched, and in the very center of the blast zone, Mireth hung in silence. His mouth parted, and from within, the first throb of the unborn thing answered. It had begun. Chapter 17 The Crown is Not Yours. The halls of the preselection hall had not seen such silence since the first howling. Wolves, alphas from every surviving bloodline, stood flanking the obsidian aisle, dressed in ceremonial leathers and bearing the scents of musk, frost, steel. The torches lining the walls burned blue with flame oil. Shadows twisted up the marble like spirits seeking escape. And on the throne of judgment sat 3 kings without crowns, each with their backs straighter than truth. Varen lounged, legs crossed, rings flashing. His smile was a blade. Mireth stood like a sentinel of the old wars, scarred, grim, unmoving. Lorcan, draped in white, said nothing at all. Because the show was about to begin. Because the prize was about to arrive. Because tonight was not about war. It was about want. The doors opened with the sound of thunder. And Mireth walked in. No, not walked. Entered. He wore nothing a courtesan should wear. His robe was stitched from undyed silk, nearly translucent, belted with wolfskin and marked at the hem in symbols none dared speak aloud. His hair, grown longer since the temple, spilled down his back in violet waves, streaked with silver that shimmered like starlight. His eyes had turned darker, older, hungrier. Around his throat sat a collar, not one of submission, but of challenge, etched with obsidian wolves circling inward, as if to say, try and bite me. But it was his belly that made the room still. Not rounded yet, not truly, but touched. The scent had changed. No longer simply an Omega's perfume. There was something more, a richness that spoke of fertility, of power, of impending bloodlines waiting to be born. He stopped in the center of the hall between the 3 thrones. Then he bowed, deeply, slowly, like he meant it, and smiled with teeth. My lords, he purred. I heard you're looking for a queen. A murmur went through the crowd. Varen chuckled. You look more like a blade than a bride. Perhaps I am both. Lorcan raised a hand. The gods have chosen. His womb bears their mark. The blood inside him is not of one tribe, but many. The one who claims him claims the throne. Gasps, not of surprise, of expectation. This had been whispered for weeks. Now it was made law. Mireth tilted his head. So you'd make me a crown, he said lightly. Of my own body. No one answered. He turned slowly, letting every lord and envoy present see the curve of his hip beneath the silk, the gleam of his bare chest, the chain running from his collar to the belt at his waist. They wanted him. They wanted what was inside him. A child born of prophecy, of corruption, of heat and fire and god blood. He could feel them already imagining it, the ceremony, the conquest, the way history would record their names beside his. He let them look. Then he laughed. Very well, he said, voice sweet as honey and twice as dangerous. If I am to be the prize, let's not pretend it's about power. Let's not dress it in robes and rights. He stepped toward the thrones. To marry me is to claim me. To claim me is to take me. Fully. Honestly. No politics. He turned in a slow circle, the silk whispering against his thighs. Here is my proposal, my lords. He paused, smiled wider. Whoever can make me come 3 times in one night wins. The silence shattered into chaos. Shouts, laughter, outrage. One envoy choked on his drink. Varen leaned forward, eyes gleaming. You would make this sacred night into a brothel? Mireth walked to him, slow and deliberate. He sat on the first step leading to Varen's dais, legs folded beneath him like a temple dancer, then looked up with those unblinking eyes. I was born in a brothel, my lord, he whispered. You want to use my womb to conquer kingdoms? Then pay the price. In sweat, in moans, in teeth. Let your blood prove its worth in the way that matters. Mireth stood, snarling. You shame us. Mireth smiled, almost kindly. No, dear Alpha. I reflect you. Lorcan rose. The room stilled again. His gaze was colder than the moon. You desecrate the divine. Mireth didn't flinch. You tried to burn me alive for your divine, he said. Now I choose myself. He stood. I will not be a trophy passed from hand to hand. I will not be a goddamned vessel for your ambitions. He turned again, looking at each of them. But if I must be a prize, then I choose the terms. 3 climaxes, he said again. No tricks, no bindings, no gods. He started to walk toward the back of the hall. No one dared stop him, not even the guards. At the edge of the torchlight he paused. His voice dropped lower, private, for no one and yet for everyone. If Kaelric were here, he said almost to himself, you'd all already be dead. A flicker in his eyes, a break, a grief so fast it barely had time to breathe. But it was there. Then he smiled again, and vanished into the corridor. Behind him the hall boiled. Debate, rage, desire, chaos. And on the far wall, where the mirror-polished stone reflected all that passed, a shadow flickered. Tall, dark, watching. No one noticed. No one but him. Chapter 18, Trade My Body for Your Throne. The signing chamber of the High Council smelled like ink and blood. Mireth stood alone beneath the silver-lit dome, barefoot on cold obsidian tiles. The hem of his ceremonial robe dragged behind him like a trail of smoke. The scroll before him was unfurled across the altar table, thick parchment, sealed with 7 sigils of wolf blood. It reeked of law, of ancient power, of something older than love. Varen waited at the opposite end, dressed not for battle, but for conquest. His armor was ceremonial black, his crown a circlet of bone. His expression was patient, amused. He had already won. Everyone knew it. This contract was merely paperwork for history. You may use a blade, one of the council scribes said, offering Mireth a ritual dagger. The old blood carries more weight. Mireth didn't take it. He reached for the edge of the parchment instead, slicing open the pad of his thumb on its sharpened corner. Blood welled instantly, crimson and hot. He pressed it to the line-marked consort binding. The room trembled. Varen's smile deepened. That's it, little thing. You've made your choice. Mireth didn't respond. He stepped back, blood still trailing from his hand. His breath shook, but his eyes stayed steady. The scribes began sealing the document, muttering blessings in low tongues. Magic curled from the paper like smoke from a dying flame. Somewhere deep below the tower, bells began to toll. Official, irrevocable. The prince consort of the future king had been chosen. No one spoke of the price. No one said Kaelric's name. They didn't have to. He had been captured 3 days ago at the edge of the northern woods. Ambushed, drugged, chained with wolfsbane. Mireth had learned the truth only when Varen brought the contract to his chamber. Trade yourself, the serpent had said, fingers ghosting down Mireth's throat. And I'll let him live. Keep him in a cage, of course. But breathing, that's what you want, isn't it? Mireth had signed without blinking. He had stood that night alone in the mirror chamber, high in the spire, stars clawing at the glass. You'd call me a whore for this, he whispered to his reflection. But at least you'd be alive to say it. His reflection didn't answer. It just looked at him, eyes too wide, too tired, a belly beginning to curve beneath the silk, a heart that thudded without pride. He hadn't cried. Even now, as the sigils on the contract began to glow, sealing his future, he didn't flinch. He simply waited. 1, 2, 3. The last sigil burned into the parchment. The blood on the floor hissed, and the mirror at the back of the chamber shattered. No one saw him enter, only the aftermath. Kaelric tore through the stone arch like a storm breaking the mountain. His coat was half burned, hair slicked with blood, his blade dripping before anyone had screamed. The first to fall was the scribe nearest the exit, spine split in a single swing. The second was one of Varen's guards, slashed from hip to throat. Then came the rest. Mireth could only watch as the wolf they declared dead descended on the chamber like judgment itself. Not roaring, not even speaking, just killing. Precise, silent, beautiful. The last to remain was Varen. He didn't move. "Come to reclaim your prize?" he drawled, even as Kaelric's blade pressed to his throat. Kaelric's voice was quiet. "I came to collect a debt." Varen smirked. "I've already paid. With him." He gestured to Mireth, who stood frozen, blood still dripping from his hand. "You should thank me. I kept him warm for you." The sword sank deeper. "You breathe again, you die," Kaelric whispered, and then he turned. Mireth still hadn't moved. Kaelric reached him in 3 strides. "Why?" His voice wasn't angry, it was raw. "Why would you do it?" Mireth tried to speak, tried to laugh. His legs buckled instead. Kaelric caught him before he hit the floor. "He said they'd kill you," Mireth rasped. "I thought, if I gave them what they wanted." He trailed off. His arms clutched at Kaelric's chest. "I thought it would be enough." Kaelric looked down at him, eyes burning. "You traded your body for my life," he said. "And you thought I'd want that?" Mireth choked on a laugh, half sob, half breathless shame. "You didn't want me when I was free. Why should it matter now?" Kaelric didn't answer. He only knelt. And then there was blood. Mireth doubled over, clutching his belly. The pain struck like lightning. "Something's wrong," he gasped. "Inside. The contract binds the womb," Kaelric muttered. "Magic-fueled gestation." Another stab of pain. Mireth screamed. Kaelric gathered him up, blade still slick in his right hand. Mireth cradled in his left. Around them, the chamber was silent now, bodies cooling, flames flickering. "You're not dying here," Kaelric said. "I already died," Mireth whispered. "When I signed it." "No," Kaelric's voice dropped. "Not yet." They moved through the halls like ghosts, past blood, past stone, past the broken pieces of a world neither of them had wanted to be part of. The tower trembled as they left. Behind them, the blood-written contract still smoked. Before them, the world had shifted. And Kaelric's voice, low and deadly, whispered into Mireth's ear as the cold wind swallowed them. "You want to birth a monster? Then live. Live long enough to look it in the eye." Chapter 19, Break Me Before I Break You. The tower room was built to contain monsters. Stone walls thick enough to muffle screams. Iron lattice across the windows to keep even wings from flight. And at the center, no throne, no chain, only a narrow bed with black sheets, untouched food trays, and a body that no longer slept. Mireth lay curled on his side, blanket twisted between his legs, eyes half-lidded, mouth parted like a wound. His fever hadn't broken, nor had the silence Kaelric demanded of him. No information sent, no spells, no words, just stillness. Recovery, Kaelric had called it. But to Mireth it was a coffin without nails. He had tried at first to obey, to heal, to survive. Then Mirren came. "You're turning your keep into a mausoleum," the pale general said, circling Kaelric in the war room like a hound scenting blood. "You think hiding your little whore from the world will keep him pure? He's not. He signed. He's been claimed." "He's breathing," Kaelric replied. "That's more than most of your men can say." "Not for long," Mirren smirked. The council wants him back, and they're willing to pardon you if you give him up. Kaelric looked up from his maps, bloodshot eyes unblinking. Pardon me? Think about it, Mireth said softly. You can't protect him forever, and if you fall, he'll go right back on the altar. This time no one's coming for him. Even wolves get tired of chasing the same ghost. Kaelric didn't answer, but that night Mireth's room was locked from the outside. No visitors, no contact, not even the guards lingered, which meant he had to get creative. By the second evening, he started humming lullabies from the brothel he'd once danced in. Off-key, filthy things about silk sheets and eager teeth. On the third, he slipped from the bed half-naked, and when a new wolf sentry brought in his meal, he brushed fingers over the man's wrist, cooing a soft, "You smell better than your commander." The poor guard nearly dropped the tray. Kaelric said nothing, until the fifth night. Mireth waited until the storm rolled over Blackfang Keep, rain slamming the window, lightning flashing silver bars across the room. Then he crawled under the covers and whispered just loud enough for the listening ears in the walls. Varen at least knew how to make me scream. The door exploded open. Kaelric stood there, soaked in rain, black coat heavy with storm water. His eyes ringed in fury. "You little shit," he growled. Mireth sat up, smile slow and venomous. "Took you long enough." Kaelric was across the room in seconds, grabbing him by the shoulders and slamming him back against the bedpost. Rain dripped from his chin onto Mireth's collarbone. "You want to die?" he snarled. "You think I won't finish what they started?" Mireth's breath caught, not from fear, but anticipation. "Do it," he whispered. "Ruin me. You've done everything else." Kaelric's grip tightened. Their foreheads nearly touched. The scent of blood and storm curled between them. "Say it," Kaelric demanded. "Say you want me to mark you." "I want," Mireth murmured, "you to decide whether you're my jailer or my god." Kaelric's hands trembled. His breath came fast. And then he kissed him. Not gently, not sweetly. It was a violent, bruising thing, mouths clashing like weapons. No promise in it, no tenderness. Just two wolves circling the same open wound. Mireth gasped into it, hands clawing at Kaelric's back, legs parting, hips rising. Kaelric pulled away. "You win," he said, voice hoarse. "I touched you." His eyes burned with self-loathing. "But I still won't fuck you." Mireth's laugh cracked in his throat, wild and wet and broken. "You will." He tilted his head back against the cold wall, teeth gleaming. "Maybe not tonight, maybe not even next moon, but you'll come to me, not for politics, not for pity, for me." Kaelric's expression was unreadable. For once he looked almost afraid, of himself, of the future, of what Mireth could become. The rain outside had stopped, but in that room they drowned all the same. Chapter 20. The night the gods fell silent. The earth split where the gods were born. The ground beneath Kaelric's boots was scorched black and laced with ancient veins of silver ash. Deep in the chasm known only as the heart of the abyss, time warped and sound bent around memory. Wolves were said to have crawled from this place on bleeding paws, howling their names into a sky no god had yet claimed. Tonight, Mireth walked barefoot into it. He wore no cloak, no armor. His skin was painted with sigils in blood and shadow, fresh and stinging. The glow of the unborn pulsed under his navel like a wound that dreamed. Kaelric watched him step into the center of the abyssal altar without trembling. Lorcan stood beside him, draped in ceremonial white, though his mouth was cracked and red, and his eyes burned with something far less holy than faith. "I should have slit your throat when I found you," Kaelric muttered. Lorcan smiled thinly. "But you didn't, because even you knew the world needs something to kneel to. I kneel to no one, Kaelric growled. You kneel to him, Lorcan said, nodding to where Mireth stood, arms open, spine arched beneath the sacred spire. Even if he doesn't see it yet. Ritual light flared. The altar came alive. Chains of divine essence rose from the stone, winding around Mireth's ankles and wrists like vines. The old tongue spilled from Lorcan's lips, incantations older than fire, older than wolf blood, reaching back to the first god scream. And then, through the black smoke that curled up from the altar floor, a voice spoke. It was not Lorcan's, nor Kaelric's, nor any living creature's. Child of thirst, flesh of the ruined line, heir of heat, do you come to claim what was promised? The temperature dropped. Mireth's breath steamed in front of him, eyes wide, pupils blown dark. A figure stepped from the smoke, tall, elegant, clothed in a shimmering robe of starlight and flame. Horns curled from his brow like molten gold, and his face was the perfect mirror of Mireth's, only crueler, older, hungrier. The king of Incubi. Mireth could not speak. The chains burned his skin. You were made for more than this? The king said softly, stepping closer. Not a pet, not a plaything, not a vessel. His hand reached out, touched Mireth's cheek. You were meant to reign. Behind them, Kaelric stepped forward, blade drawn. No. The king turned his gaze on him, expression bored. Wolf, beast, slave of instinct. You have taken what does not belong to you. Kaelric met his stare with that singular, reckless calm. Then take him back. Mireth let out a broken sound, half laugh, half choke. Blood smeared his teeth. I'm tired, he whispered, of being passed around like a cursed coin. The king tilted his head. You wish to choose your ruin? I wish, Mireth said, to end yours. And with that, he bit his own wrist open, letting the magic-laced blood pour down his arm. He turned, looked at Kaelric. I could have ruled this world, he said, voice shaking. But I'd rather be the weapon you carry than the throne they chain me to. Then he moved. He pressed his bloodied palm against Kaelric's chest, whispered 3 words in the old tongue. The sigils flared. Kaelric's body jerked. The magic of the unborn, the force meant to awaken gods, to bring temples crashing and kingdoms to their knees, was not sent inward. It was sent into him. Kaelric screamed. Light poured from his eyes, his mouth, the lines of old scars and deeper guilt. The altar cracked beneath his feet. Lorcan shouted, lunged forward, but Kaelric was already moving. Steel met bone. The blade pierced Lorcan's chest like prophecy fulfilled. The priest looked down at the metal protruding from him, then up in disbelief. You would kill a servant of the divine? There is no divine left, Kaelric said coldly. Only what we survive. He yanked the blade free. Lorcan crumpled. The smoke surged. The king of Incubi roared, not in pain, but in rage, a sound that tore sky from stone. The chains around Mireth melted. The altar collapsed. The sacred spire split down the middle like a bone broken clean. Kaelric caught Mireth as he fell. They dropped to the ruins, ash choking the air, divine fire burning itself out in streaks of gold across the sky. For a moment, there was only breathing, then silence, the kind of silence gods feared. Kaelric brushed dust from Mireth's brow. You shouldn't have done that. Mireth's lips were bloodless. You would have done the same. I don't think I would have, Kaelric said. He pressed his forehead to Mireth's, voice low. But maybe that's why you're the one I trust. Mireth gave the ghost of a laugh. Not love, just trust. Love's cheap, Kaelric whispered. You're the only mad bastard I can rely on. Mireth closed his eyes and smiled. Above them, The temple groaned once more, then collapsed completely, a cathedral of fallen glory. No voices followed it. No divine lament. No thunder of heaven's wrath. Only the wind, the wolves, and a war not yet finished. Chapter 21 The Wedding He Never Wanted. The bells of Ebonvale rang like knives across the dawn. Mireth stood beneath the arch of the bridal hall, wrapped in a veil the color of ash. The fabric clung to his shoulders, soft and heavy, embroidered with runes he could not read. Gold threads stitched the hem in patterns of wolves and flame. His hair was bound in silver clasps, throat bare, collarbone exposed like a sacrifice laid clean. The seamstresses had left hours ago. The silence that followed was heavier than their needles. He stood before the mirror, alone. He didn't recognize the man who stared back. "Kaelric," he whispered, voice barely breath. "If you saw me like this, would you finally take me?" The mirror offered no answer, only his own reflection, too regal, too still, too hollow to be human. His hands fell to his belly, cradling the slight rise beneath the silk. Magic pulsed there like a second heartbeat, too quiet to be a life, too loud to ignore. The door creaked open. Varen entered with the scent of crushed herbs and smug triumph clinging to his robes. His eyes trailed down Mireth's form like a collector admiring a weapon finally in his grasp. "You look exquisite," he said. "A vision worthy of sealing the end of a war." Mireth didn't flinch. He merely turned, slowly, gaze fixed and smile practiced. "Will the kingdom clap when I spread my legs? Or wait until you plant your seed first?" Varen's smile didn't waver. "Let them clap. Let them sing. By tomorrow you will be the most revered consort in all the 5 realms. They'll forget every name you've lain with, except mine." Mireth's teeth clenched so hard he tasted blood. He thought of Kaelric, what he would say, what he wouldn't say, how he would look at him, not with hunger, not even pity, but with the kind of fury that tasted like restraint, and how it had always burned more than any desire. Varen stepped closer. Mireth turned away. Far below, beneath the castle, the dungeon screamed. Kaelric had been shackled in silver chains lined with suppressants. His wrists burned raw from the struggle. The scent of rot and rust soaked the stone. He hadn't spoken since they brought him here, hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. Until now, the guards had made the mistake of mentioning it. Passing whisper. A laugh. The whore's finally getting a crown. Can't believe he chose Varen. Must be desperate. Kaelric's head lifted. One guard noticed, stepped back. The silence that followed wasn't human. Kaelric moved. The silver chains snapped. The suppressant seals carved into his skin glowed red, then black, then burst in sparks as his body twisted unnaturally, bones cracking, muscles seizing in resistance. His scent hit the room like a blade, metallic, wild, laced with death and denial. He reached up, grabbed the side of his neck, and bit. Flesh tore. Blood surged down his shoulder, thick with phenomenal discharge. He didn't scream. He didn't even groan. He just ripped open the gland that bound him to submission, then stood, panting, soaked in his own scent, smiling like a man with nothing left to lose. The castle above swelled with preparations. Silk draped every banister, every wall. The throne room had been cleared and transformed into a holy chamber, one meant to house not coronation, but consummation. The wolves of the council had gathered, masked in silver and wine, whispering of unity and strategy and control. Mireth sat in silence, hands on his lap. The white robe felt like a shroud. Mirren entered from the side aisle, lips pressed into a frown. "You don't have to look so proud," he muttered to Mireth. "There's no dignity in martyrdom." Mireth smiled faintly. "Then why did you wear your dress uniform?" You look ready to cry at my altar. I came to stop it, Mireth said. But I don't think there's anything left to save. Mireth laughed, bitter and soft. Isn't that the point? Meanwhile, Kaelric tore through the underlevels like a plague. Steel met bone. He didn't use a sword, he was the weapon. Every wolf that stood in his path fell, not from strategy, but the sheer inevitability of his rage. His scent burned through the castle like wildfire, causing lower-ranking wolves to drop to their knees, suffocating under the pressure of a dominant force unbound. Blood smeared his chest. His throat was slick with it. His left side pulsed with open nerve endings where his gland used to be, but he didn't slow. He couldn't. Not when he could smell him. Mireth, the bond they had never marked, never dared to speak of, it still tugged. It always would. In the antechamber, the final rites began. Varen reached out with gloved hands to take Mireth's. Mireth let him. Only at the last second did he close his eyes. He imagined a field, a fire, a bed, a cloak thrown over naked shoulders and Kaelric's voice murmuring threats in place of vows. He imagined being wanted, not as prize or vessel, but as pain worth protecting. Do you accept this union? The priest asked. Mireth opened his mouth. The doors exploded. Kaelric came through the smoke like vengeance incarnate, shirtless, bleeding, his eyes feral. No one moved. Not the guards. Not Varen. Not even Mireth. Because Kaelric didn't look at anyone but him. Mireth rose from his seat, slowly. Kaelric was panting, trembling from the effort to stay standing. You said, Mireth whispered. You wouldn't come. I lied. Varen stepped forward. Seize. Kaelric moved first. One throw of his blade, and Varen was pinned by the shoulder to the altar. Chaos erupted. Mireth ran. Kaelric caught him. They didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't kiss. They only held each other in the center of the wreckage while wolves howled and bells kept ringing and the kingdom watched its crown fall into blood and madness. Later, in the mirror, Mireth stood alone again, the wedding robe torn and ruined. He smiled, softly, bitterly. To the road I walked alone, he murmured. All the way to the end. He turned to the door. To the wolf who followed, he added. Come, bring your armor. The wedding was never completed, but the war at last had begun. Chapter 22. Bite me or kill me. The shattered doors still swung on broken hinges, and Kaelric stood in the ruin of the wedding hall like a wolf pried from hell. Blood soaked his arms, drying against muscle cut with effort and fury. The wound at his neck, self-torn, vicious, still wept slowly, dark against paler skin. The scent of him poured through the hall like thunder. Rage, heat, home. Mireth froze. He had thought Kaelric would not come, then prayed he wouldn't, then begged silently that he would. And now he stood under the weight of every gaze in the chamber, councilmen, priests, soldiers, traitors, and all of them had turned from the altar to the man at the threshold. White robe torn, crown askew, Mireth looked more like prey than prize. Step away, Kaelric growled, voice frayed to the edge of breaking. From him. Now. Varen didn't move. His eyes glinted with the sheen of secrets long planned. You're too late, he said, tone quiet, triumphant. He signed it. He is bound to me. You have no place here, Kaelric. Not anymore. Kaelric's eyes burned as he looked at Mireth. Did you sign it? Mireth's throat worked, but no words came. His mouth was too dry. He had signed it. For Kaelric. For a life he thought would be spared. He nodded once. A tremble, not a confession. Kaelric flinched as if struck. Varen stepped forward, arms wide. Then all of this is done. Step aside. Exile. You're drenched in your own failure. You're wrong. Mireth said, suddenly voice shaking. It's not done. Nothing's done. Varen's smile curled. Still think there's some dignity left in you? You're carrying a shell, Mireth. The magic in your womb, it's not yours. It was never meant to be. It's a vessel. A throne for the old king. Your body is a cage for a god. You said yes to that. A silence cracked the air. And then Mireth laughed. It was broken, too high, threaded with something like grief, something like hysteria. A cage, he said, eyes shimmering. That's what I've always been to all of you. And you want to crown me with possession and call it peace. He turned to Kaelric, eyes wild. Is that why you won't love me? Because I'm already filled with something you can't kill. Kaelric's jaw tensed. I've been touched by hands I hated, Mireth whispered. Used like a relic, offered like a gift no one asked for. And I? He stepped forward, robe trailing behind him like the remains of a flag. I'm done being anyone's. If you won't save me, Kaelric, if you won't claim me, then kill me. Right here. Varen's eyes lit up. Yes, he said. Let him choose. Kaelric didn't speak. The wolves behind him growled, but none moved. Mireth stepped closer, pressing a blood-wet hand to Kaelric's chest. Do it, he said, voice breaking. Bite me, or kill me. Kaelric's hands were shaking. He looked down at Mireth, eyes not soft but raw, as if every ounce of him had been peeled back and left to scream. His mouth opened, no words, only a snarl, strangled and desperate. Then, in front of the entire court, he reached for his neck and tore it open wider. The glands split, the air filled with a scent so primal it silenced the room. Dominance, fury, need. He grabbed Mireth by the nape, pulled him in, and crushed their mouths together, not with lust, not with gentleness, but with a wild, consuming force that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with mine. Mireth gasped against him as Kaelric's blood smeared between them, soaking into his skin. The world dropped away, and for a split second, they linked. Their minds opened. Thoughts slammed into each other. Images, memories, the scent of a shared night in a cave long ago. Mireth laughing over Kaelric's lap. Kaelric silently watching him sleep like he could hold back the sunrise with a glare. And deeper. Kaelric on his knees beside Miretha's unconscious body, whispering, "Don't die. I never learned how to say I need you." Mireth curled under a black cloak, crying alone, mouthing the shape of Kaelric's name just to feel like it meant something. Then it was gone. The blood thread snapped. Kaelric stumbled back, shaking. Mireth collapsed, breath ragged. The room erupted in chaos. But no one reached them. No one dared. Kaelric dragged Mireth against him, shielding his body with his own. Varen's face twisted. "You'll die for him?" he spat. Kaelric bared his teeth. "I lived for him." Varen surged forward, but a blade was suddenly pressed to his throat. Mirren's. "I'd think twice," Mirren said coldly. "You're bleeding supporters, Varen. And no one wants to back a king who just lost his prize." Kaelric looked down at Mireth, who was blinking up at him through tears. "You're not a dog," Kaelric said hoarsely. "Not a whore." His voice shook. "You're mine." He stood, tore the white wedding robe from Miretha's shoulders and cast it into the fire pit. The flames flared. Then, without asking, he pulled his own battle-worn cloak from his back and draped it over Mireth. It smelled of blood, of safety, of home. "Married or not," he growled. "They tried to take you." Mireth clutched the cloak around himself. "And now," Kaelric turned to the crowd, voice like stone. "Now we go to war." Chapter 23, The Betrayal in Mirren's Eyes. The wind howled through the broken ribs of the council tower, sweeping ash and cold across the worn stone. Once a seat of power, now a hollowed ruin on the edge of nothingness. It stood like a corpse too proud to fall. Fires flickered low in the surrounding camp, and above them all, the sky bled gray. Mireth arrived at twilight. He rode with 20 wolves behind him, cloaks tattered but colors intact, white on black, sigil of the High Watch. The old allegiance Kaelric had once commanded. The old loyalty. Mireth stood at the threshold, Kaelric at his side, sword unsheathed but lowered. "Kael," Mireth said, dismounting. His voice held no warmth, but his eyes did. "We heard what you did, what you gave up, what they tried to take from you." "You're late," Kaelric answered. "I didn't come sooner because I was waiting," Mireth replied, "to see which side deserved dying for." Kaelric's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "And," Mireth stepped forward, "I choose yours, if you'll have me." Mireth said nothing, but his gaze lingered, longer than necessary, on the place where Mireth's scent clung to his collar. Something off, bitter under the smoke. Kaelric reached forward and clasped Mireth's forearm. "Welcome back, brother." That night, there was a feast, meager, half-burnt meat and spiced grain. But it was the first warmth the rebel camp had known in weeks. They gathered around the fire in what had once been the debating hall. The roof long collapsed, stars naked above. Mireth sat beside Kaelric. Mireth stood across the flames. He watched and listened, too still, too quiet. "You don't trust him," one of the younger wolves whispered, offering Mireth a drink. Mireth's lips barely moved. "I trust Kaelric." "Not the same thing." "No, not the same at all." Mireth laughed loudly at something Kaelric said. Their old ease returned too quickly. It slipped on like a glove worn thin with use, comfortable, familiar, and dangerous. Then, just once, Mireth turned his eyes toward Mireth and smiled. It wasn't a smile meant for sharing. It was meant for marking. Mireth stiffened. His hand clenched around the goblet. That scent too clean. Not just wolf. There was something beneath it. A gloss, a shimmer, like a veil cast over something rotten. Blood magic. Submission tincture. His own tribe's forgotten rituals. Mireth had been touched by forbidden things. The revelation hit like ice in his lungs. He moved. Across the flames, between the bodies, past Kaelric. "Mireth!" The blade flicked too fast to follow. Kaelric's breath caught. He jerked back, too late. The dagger found his side under ribs between muscle and lung. And Mireth's hand, steady, practiced, twisted. Kaelric choked. The fire roared up around them in stunned silence. Mireth's voice was calm. "I didn't want it to be you, Kael, but it was always going to be him." He looked at Mireth. "No one should carry power like that and not be leashed." Mireth screamed. The sound fractured the night. He didn't remember crossing the space. Only that Kaelric collapsed into his arms, blood pouring hot across his stomach, soaking his thighs. "No, no! Get him out!" Mireth commanded his wolves. But they didn't move, because the scent had changed. The air had changed. Something inside Mireth cracked. And the thing that lived in him woke. A scream became a howl. The torches shattered. The fire pit exploded upward. Mireth clutched Kaelric to his chest as his body lit with silver sigils, veins darkening, skin too hot to touch. His mouth bled between his teeth from the effort not to break apart entirely. "Don't die," he whispered. "Don't die, not for me." Mireth backed away, blade still in hand. But he was trembling now. "Don't make me kill you," he said, quieter. "You weren't supposed to care." Mireth looked up, eyes no longer human. "I didn't," he said, voice like a blade drawn from fire. "Until he bled for me." Then he reached out, not with hands, with the magic that had no name. Mireth screamed, fell to his knees, hands clawing at his face as visions flooded him. Kaelric's agony, Mireth's nights under strangers, the price of every touch he'd sold and every kiss he'd swallowed with shame. All of it poured into Mireth like poison. Then it stopped. Mireth stood over him, trembling, skin steaming. Kaelric gasped behind him, still alive, barely. Mireth didn't look at Mireth again. He knelt beside Kaelric, hands hovering uselessly over the wound. "You need a healer. I need you quiet," Kaelric rasped. He coughed blood. It dripped from the corner of his mouth. Mireth choked on his own breath. "He betrayed you. He lied to all of us." Kaelric's fingers touched his wrist, weakly. "No," he whispered. "He didn't just betray me." He closed his eyes. "He betrayed us." Mireth's face crumpled. Tears slid down, hot and silent. Kaelric smiled through bloodied teeth. "You said once. You wanted to see me die for you." Mireth shook his head, clutching his chest. Kaelric's smile was small, tired, almost proud. "Well, did I satisfy you?" Mireth broke. The howl that rose from him shook the sky. Chapter 24, The Belly of the Beast. There was no pain at first, only a strange warmth, like slipping beneath water too still to stir, too heavy to breathe. Mireth floated through it, naked but untouched, as if the world had forgotten the weight of his skin. Then came the sound, a heartbeat louder than his own. Not human, not familiar. It echoed like a drum against bone, steady and relentless, drawing him deeper into the dark. He opened his eyes in a place that was not a place at all. No sky, no ground, only a vast, yawning void laced with the glimmer of stars that pulsed like eyes, watching, waiting. And in the center of it all stood a mirror. He approached it. Inside the reflection he saw himself, but not the man Kaelric had known. This Mireth was crowned in bone and silk, eyes glowing violet, skin etched with living sigils that writhed in time with the pulse beneath his navel. His belly was swollen, not grotesque, not beautiful, just final. Promise fulfilled, curse complete. Behind this version of himself, creatures bowed. Beasts with too many limbs, wolves with human hands, incubi that breathed fire and wept blood. They adored him. They worshipped him. He turned from the mirror, but the image moved with him. "You could be this," a voice whispered. Feminine, familiar. Mireth froze. "Mother?" he whispered, not turning around. The voice circled him, soft as silk dragged over glass. "I gave you everything, and still you crawl, begging for scraps of love from wolves who would sooner mark your grave than your skin." She stepped forward, emerging from the dark. Tall, beautiful, with Mireth's eyes and a smile like razors. "You were born to conquer," she said, stroking his cheek. "Not to beg." He slapped her hand away. "You're dead. And you're dying," she replied sweetly. "Look at yourself. Broken, bleeding, torn between wanting to be loved and wanting to be used." "I want to be free." "You think Kaelric offers you freedom?" Her laughter was like wind chimes caught in a storm. "He cages you with gentleness. He chains you with silence." Mireth shook his head, trembling. "I chose him." "Then choose this," she said, gesturing to the mirror. The image shifted. Kaelric, eyes black with madness, body warped and monstrous, stood in a sea of corpses. Wolves, humans, gods alike. All dead. All for Mireth. The crowned Mireth knelt before him, smiling. "He'll love you if you make him your weapon," the voice whispered. "No," Mireth said. "That's not love. It's power," she replied. "And power is safer than love." He stepped forward, shoving the mirror. It didn't crack. He slammed his fists into it, over and over, shouting, bleeding, breaking his knuckles against the surface that showed only the version of him that had given in. The version Kaelric would never touch, even to kill. A voice echoed from the glass. Not his mother's. Not his own. You are mine. Came from within. The fetus. The thing growing inside him. Not yet alive but already aware. Watching him from the blood it drank and the pain it fed on. Mireth fell to his knees. Get out, he gasped. You're not me. You don't get to be me. But I am you, it answered, and the mirror finally cracked. He awoke screaming. The room was dim, lit by moonlight. His sheets were soaked with sweat. The scent of ash and dried blood hung in the air. Kaelric sat beside the bed, silent, watching. His armor was gone. He looked like a man again, tired one, a raw one. His eyes were lined with shadows and a cut traced along his jaw, still fresh. You were dreaming, he said, voice low. Mireth stared at him, chest rising and falling too fast. You didn't leave. Kaelric's jaw flexed. No. Mireth turned his head, biting back the sob in his throat. It's waking up, he whispered. The thing inside me. I know. It wants me to become something I'm not. It wants to win. Kaelric didn't move, but his gaze never left Mireth's face. I won't let it have you. You can't stop it, Mireth said. No one can. Not even me. Kaelric leaned forward. I'm not here to stop you, he said. I'm here to tell you the choice is yours. Mireth blinked, stunned. What? If you want to keep it, Kaelric said, then keep it. If you want to kill it, I'll make sure no one stops you. And if it kills you, he paused. Something in his throat caught. Then I'll go with you. You don't get to say that. I just did. Silence fell between them. Mireth turned his face into the pillow. When he spoke again, his voice was so small it almost didn't reach. I don't want to keep it. Kaelric's breath caught. But I want to live, Mireth finished. Kaelric reached out. For the first time, his hand trembled. He took Mireth's hand in his. Then I'll break whatever needs to be broken to keep you breathing, he said. Even the gods. Mireth closed his eyes. Not in surrender. In peace. He had finally been given the one thing he'd never dared ask for. Not love. Not a claim. Not a mark. Just the right to choose. Chapter 25, The Last Pact. The battlefield stank of blood and broken faith. Smoke coiled in the dawnlight like ghosts that refused to rise, and beneath the shattered cliffs, where the soil was still black with the blood of ancestors, Kaelric stood ankle-deep in ash, his blade no longer shining, but caked in flesh and sorrow. Behind him, Mireth staggered. He should not have been there, too pale, too thin, belly too taut with the thing inside him that pulsed more with hunger than life. But he stood, robes torn and fingers stained with the ink of war maps, barking commands until his throat bled. The last stronghold had fallen. The wolves who followed Kaelric were few, broken by Mirren's betrayal, by the loss of counsel, by years of hunting their own. Yet they stood still because he stood, and because Mireth would not fall. Not yet. Mirren's breathing, a scout whispered, dragging the once great commander toward them. Kaelric did not move. He sheathed his sword and knelt beside the man who had once called him brother. Mirren's face was more blood than skin. Mireth stepped forward, chest heaving, ignoring the pain in his gut that clawed at his insides. I told you, Mirren rasped, smiling with half a mouth. You'd regret trusting me. No, Kaelric said, voice hoarse. I regret not killing you sooner. But Mireth crouched beside him, placing 2 fingers over Mirren's temple. He's fading fast. Let him, Kaelric muttered. But Mirren's hand reached for Mireth's. I tried to resist him, Varen. but the mark he placed, it eats reason. You're not here for forgiveness, Kaelric said. Spare us your repentance. No, I'm here to warn you. Mireth froze. Kaelric looked down. The birth night, Mirren coughed. They call it 28th, blood moon. He plans to open the altar beneath the throne and transfer the spirit of the ancient king into your unborn. Miretha's blood ran cold. The child is a shell to him, Mirren whispered. Not a life, a throne. Kaelric grabbed him by the front of his ruined armor. Where? Under Ebonvale, Mirren gasped. Where the gods first spoke. He wants to rewrite the bloodline. His eyes fluttered. And he will, unless what, they'd never know. Mirren's head lolled to the side, and his last breath came with the sound of thunder, far off, at the horizon's edge. The first signal fire of Varen's army. They're coming, a soldier called out. 10,000, maybe more. Mireth said nothing. He stared at Mirren's corpse, then down at the earth beneath them. His vision blurred, not from grief, but from exhaustion. Every breath felt like sand scraping down his throat. His stomach coiled with cramps he no longer bothered to disguise. Kaelric stood and reached for him. Mireth didn't flinch. Not anymore. In silence, Kaelric pulled him close, holding him the way he never allowed himself to during peace. He buried his face in the curve of Miretha's neck, where no scent remained but pain. I'm not afraid to die, Mireth whispered. Kaelric didn't speak. But I'm afraid of leaving you behind, of leaving it inside me, of you having to live with that. Kaelric pulled back, eyes unreadable. I need you to promise me, Mireth said, voice quiet. If I don't make it to the 28th, if something goes wrong before it's born, you end it. Don't let it take my body. Kaelric's jaw clenched. Don't ask that of me. I'm not asking. I'm giving it to you. My body. My fate. I trust you. A tear slipped down Kaelric's cheek, and he didn't bother to hide it. Mireth lifted his hand, brushing it away. You can kill gods, Kaelric. But can you keep a promise? Kaelric crushed him against his chest. Don't make me. I'm not planning to die, Mireth said, a faint smile playing on cracked lips. I'm just preparing the man I love in case I do. Kaelric stiffened, but Mireth didn't pull the words back. Not anymore. He kissed Kaelric's brow. A soft, trembling press of lips to skin that smelled of iron and frost and nights that had never known peace. I believe in you, Mireth murmured. Kaelric closed his eyes. I don't need your belief. But you have it anyway. They stood together as the sun dipped low, as the banners of Varen's army crested the ridge, black as pitch, studded with bone-white sigils. The scent of bloodlust carried on the wind. Kaelric reached down, unsheathing his blade once more. Mireth rested a hand on his arm. One last pact, he said. Kaelric nodded. If I live, Mireth said, you stay with me. And if you die, Kaelric said, voice dark, then I go mad. Don't say that. You live, I rule. You die, I raise the world. Mireth chuckled through the pain, soft and bitter. Then I guess I better live long enough to see you crowned. They turned to face the rising storm, two figures alone before an army of thousands. But they had made their pact, and Kaelric never broke a vow. Chapter 26. You wanted a monster, didn't you? The old temple breathed like a dying god, each gust of wind from its broken arches a wheeze, each falling stone a dying heartbeat. Vines choked the sacred murals, cracked idols grinned with hollow sockets, and deep beneath the moss and decay, the bones of a once mighty race pulsed with the scent of blood and magic. Mireth stood in the center of it all, barefoot, trembling. The ground around him steamed where his feet touched it, warped in a ring of blackened heat. His fingers twitched, nails now claw-tipped. Translucent wings, no longer entirely illusion, fluttered from his back, their tips rimmed with frost and fire. His belly had swelled taut with the cursed thing inside, and it shifted now, eager, stretching his skin in ways it should not. He no longer knew which voices were real. "You could be beautiful," whispered a voice from the ruin's shadows. "You are beautiful," said another, closer, wetter. "They want to make you human," rasped a third. "But you were born from sin and silk. Don't you want to be a god?" Mireth laughed, or sobbed. It was hard to tell. He turned to the gathering behind him, tattered remnants of the once glorious Incubi court. They bowed to no king now, only to power, only to the thing writhing beneath his ribcage. "You would crown a parasite," he said hoarsely. "You think this thing makes me worthy? It makes you ours," the eldest among them said, stepping forward with eyes black as oil. "Let it bloom. Let the flesh tear. Let the old world fall." "No," the word echoed. A silence followed, disbelieving. Then, "You deny your own blood?" the eldest hissed. "I deny yours." Miretha's voice cracked. "I don't want to be a king. I don't want to be a thing. I want to be," he swallowed, throat raw. "Just someone, anyone, person, even if it means being unloved." "You are unloved already," one whispered. Mireth flinched, because part of him believed it. The visions came stronger now. Kaelric walking away, Mireth dying with hate in his eyes, the Wolf Council casting judgment. The baby inside him wasn't a baby. It was a hole, a hunger. It didn't kick. It grinned. His legs gave out. He collapsed, knees hitting stone, breath ragged. The incubi circled. "Let go," one crooned. "Stop fighting. Just this once." He almost did. But then the temple door exploded. The blast shattered the stone frame, and through the smoke walked the only thing in Miretha's world louder than pain. Kaelric. Hair soaked in rain, armor cracked and steaming, blood dripping from one hand where his sword bit into his palm. His scent, wolf, ash, fury, flooded the air like a tidal wave, swallowing every phantom voice. The incubi hissed, but Kaelric didn't even look at them. His eyes were on Mireth. And Mireth laughed again, a high, hysterical thing. "You're late." "I'm always late," Kaelric growled. Mireth tried to stand. Failed. Kaelric strode forward. The incubi tried to bar him. He didn't bother drawing steel. He reached for the nearest one and snapped its neck with a twist. The others scattered, hissing like insects scalded by sunlight. Kaelric knelt. "You shouldn't be here," Mireth whispered. Kaelric ignored him. Hands gripped his arms. Hot, rough, anchoring. "I'm not a person anymore," Mireth murmured. I think I'm becoming it." "You think too much," Kaelric muttered, pulling him close. Mireth sobbed once, then suddenly tried to claw him. Kaelric didn't flinch. He let the nails rake his chest. Let the wings slam into him. Let the tail, because yes, Mireth had a tail now, whip at his thigh. And then, when Mireth screamed, Kaelric slapped him. Not in violence, but in force. In realness. Cracked through the air like thunder. Mireth froze. "I've let you run," Kaelric said, voice low, trembling with restraint. "I've let you hide, seduce, lie, taunt. I've watched you kill yourself in pieces for years trying to be what they needed. You think I don't know what it means to want to be loved?" Miretha's lip bled. Kaelric pressed their foreheads together. "You're not a king. You're not a whore. You're not a womb." "I'm not anything," Mireth whispered. "You're alive." Mireth broke then. Not into madness, but into sobbing. Guttural, ugly, choking. His fingers twisted in Kaelric's tunic, claws retracting. The monstrous wings sagged. The scent in the air, wild and toxic, softened into something sharp with grief. "I'm so tired," Mireth said. "I know. I don't want to be special." "You never were," Kaelric said. "You're just unlucky, and I'm too stubborn to let bad things win." He pulled out a silver blade. Mireth's breath hitched. "Are you going to kill me?" Kaelric stared at him. Then, slowly, lifted the blade and placed the hilt into Mireth's hands. "I came to save you," he said. Mireth stared at the sword, then at Kaelric. "You sure I'm worth it?" "No," Kaelric said, "but I want to find out." Behind them, the temple began to shake. The incubi fled into the cracks of the ruin. The child inside Mireth stirred, sensing its time nearing. Mireth looked down at the blade, then up, and for the first time in a long, long while he smiled. Not seductively, not slyly, but like someone who had finally made peace with being human, even if just for a moment longer. Chapter 27. I'd rather you hated me. The forest was too quiet. No wind, no birds, no scent of prey. Only the cold breath of old magic curling between the trees, carrying the weight of something older than gods and more stubborn than death. Kaelric stepped through the last of the warding stones, dragging Mireth behind him. His grip was iron, but not cruel, just unyielding, like everything else about him. Mireth stumbled, bare feet skidding over the moss-covered runes etched into the clearing. The fire altar waited at the center, cold now, but hungry. "You're not doing this?" Mireth spat, yanking his arm. "You can't. You don't get to choose what part of me dies." Kaelric didn't answer. He didn't look at him. "Kaelric," Mireth growled, voice laced with pheromones and panic. "Don't pretend I'm not here. Don't pretend you can't smell it on me. I'm in heat. The thing in me is moving. It's waking. It wants out, and so do I. You want to be a hero? Then fuck me. End it that way." Still silence. The clearing shimmered as Kaelric activated the boundary sigils. Rings of ash and salt flared to life, forming concentric circles of power around the ancient altar. High above, in the trees, two silent watchers perched. The last remaining charm which from the north and a withered incubi elder, neither speaking, only bearing witness. Mireth fought harder. His nails caught Kaelric's cheek, drawing blood. "Say something," he whispered, broken now. "Tell me why. Why you won't touch me but still want to save me. Why you drag me to a slaughterhouse and act like it's mercy." Kaelric turned then. Just a fraction. Just enough for Mireth to see the line of his jaw tremble. "I'm doing this," Kaelric said, voice like flint against steel, "because you begged me to make sure you lived. This isn't living. It's better than dying. You don't know that. I do." The flames ignited beneath Mireth's feet. The altar flared gold, then violet, then a deep, punishing red. Mireth screamed, not from the heat, not yet, but from the violation of it. The stripping of his will, the helplessness. The elder began to chant. Kaelric moved to the outer ring, face stone. "No, no, please." Mireth twisted in the bindings that weren't ropes but something older. Desire turned into shackle, memory fused with stone. "If you're going to kill me, do it with your hands." Kaelric didn't move. The magic surged higher. Mireth threw his head back and laughed. A cruel, hysterical thing. "You know what, Alpha? I'd rather you hated me. I'd rather you broke me open, spread me on this altar, and ruined me. At least then I'd feel something from you. At least then I'd mean something." His voice cracked on the last word. It was too close to begging. The fire licked his thighs now. It wasn't heat, it was unmaking. The ancient kind that peeled back layers of self, burned not flesh but potential. The magic clawed into his womb, into the unnatural life nested there. and it fought back. Kaelric clenched his fists jaw tight. I seduced half the kingdom, Mireth hissed, panting. But not you. Never you. Not even once. Is that why you wanted dead? Because it means someone got inside me before you did. Kaelric said nothing. Mireth arched as the spell bit deeper, tearing into his nerve endings like threads yanked from a tapestry. His back hit the altar. His legs gave out, and still Kaelric did not move. I need you, Mireth whispered, a tear sliding into his mouth. But I'm not allowed to want you. Do you know what kind of hell that is? The flames reached his abdomen. The creature inside twisted violently, as if it too feared being erased. Blood bloomed from his nose, his gums, between his thighs. Kill me or touch me, Kaelric, Mireth sobbed. But don't save me like this. Kaelric's fingers twitched. His throat bobbed once as he swallowed something that looked too much like regret. The elder paused. The magic pulsed, awaiting final command. Mireth met Kaelric's eyes, and for the first time didn't ask for love. I'd rather die with your hatred, he said, voice barely audible over the roaring heat. Then live with your pity. Kaelric didn't answer. Not with words. He took one step forward, then another, then stopped just before the final ring, where the heat threatened to consume even him. He closed his eyes and gave the order. The spell completed. Mireth screamed, not the seductive cry of one playing pain for pleasure, not the practiced moan of a courtesan. This was raw, animal, terrifying, and then silence. Smoke curled in patterns of mourning above the altar. The watchers disappeared into mist. The fire died as suddenly as it had flared. Kaelric knelt beside the crumpled form, still bound, skin blistered, blood pooling beneath. He touched Mireth's shoulder. It was cold. Then, a cough, a ragged breath. Mireth blinked up at him through a haze of tears and ash. You didn't kill me, he rasped. No, you should've. Kaelric stared down at him for a long time, then said, You want to die, Mireth, because no one ever stayed after they touched you. A pause. I stayed. Mireth's lips trembled. You didn't touch me. Kaelric looked at the ruined altar, at the blood-stained symbols. I touched every part of you that mattered, and still he did not kiss him. Mireth closed his eyes. Then you've killed me worse than they ever did. Kaelric stood, turned away. Mireth whispered, just before unconsciousness took him. You saved me, and you ruined the last of my pride. Kaelric's voice came low and hollow. You don't need pride to live, just breath. And then he walked away, leaving Mireth alive, broken, and burning. Chapter 28. The Burned, the Beautiful, the Beast. The valley was not made for war. Its wildflowers were trampled beneath iron-clad boots. The streams choked with ash. The stones trembled with ancient resonance as the final phase of the ritual ignited, the runes on the earth glowing a vicious red. At the center of the circle, Mireth writhed. The magic had nearly gutted him. His body, burned from within, was pale and slick with sweat. His limbs trembled, bound not by rope but by the last strings of mortality. And from his abdomen something stirred, not like a child, not like a life, like a monster remembering it was once a god. Kaelric knelt at his side, shirt torn, arm laced with fresh lacerations, blood soaking through his leathers. But his eyes, those fierce, gray eyes, never left Mireth's face. It's almost here, Kaelric said hoarsely. Just hold on. Mireth's lips moved, but no sound came. Then the sky shattered. A roar echoed through the cliffs as Varen descended with the last of his loyalists. Black banners snapped in the wind. Behind him rode the crimson-cloaked assassins of the royal order, silent, fast, deadly. Kaelric rose, pulling his sword free. It hissed through the air, already coated with dried blood from the earlier assault. He turned once to look at Mireth. No promises, no vows, just one silent truth passed between them. He would not let them take him. The magic flared. The womb split. Mireth arched, choking on his own scream as something fleshless, red as coal, shaped like hunger itself, began to push free from his body. Kill it before it breathes. The charm which cried from the cliff. Kaelric leapt. Steel met steel as the first assassin reached the circle. Kaelric's blade severed his throat in a clean arc, but he couldn't rest. Another was already behind. He spun, blocked, parried, stabbed. Blood spattered across the glowing runes. Varen strode forward, untouched, his dark cloak dragging embers in its wake. "You can't keep it from me," he called. "You think this is love, Kaelric? All I see is weakness." Kaelric didn't respond. He was too busy cutting down the next two wolves. But he heard Mireth moan, a soft, broken sound behind him. Kaelric pivoted. The thing had nearly formed now. It pulsed with unnatural light, suspended by the ritual's power above Mireth's open womb. It had no eyes, but it turned toward Kaelric as if it knew him, as if it recognized the one who would end it. Varen snarled and charged. Kaelric moved faster. Steel clanged. Claws raked. One assassin's blade slid across Kaelric's ribs. Another cut deep into his thigh. He didn't stop. His steps were heavy now, blood loss slowing him, but his focus was ice. He reached the circle just as the thing began to solidify. His mouth opened. Not a cry. Promise. And then Kaelric drove his sword into it. The shriek that followed cracked stone. The ritual shattered. Magic exploded outward in a halo of gold and violet, tossing everyone backward. The corpse of the unborn monster twitched once, then turned to ash. Silence. Then movement. Kaelric stumbled forward, barely upright, one hand pressed to his side. Mireth lay still in the center of the smoldering circle, pale as bone, lips parted slightly, eyes closed. Kaelric dropped to his knees beside him. "Mireth." No response. He shook him once, twice. "Mireth." A breath. Shallow. Faint. Then, barely audible, Mireth whispered, "You killed it." Kaelric swallowed. "Yes. I didn't think you'd actually kill your last hope." "You were my last hope," Kaelric said, voice wrecked. Mireth's lashes fluttered. He smiled. "He's not my alpha," he murmured to no one. "But he's mine." Kaelric leaned down, forehead pressing to Mireth's. "You're not done yet." Mireth blinked up at him. "I can't feel my legs." "Good," Kaelric said, voice thick. "You're not running from me again." From the cliffs above, the few surviving wolves began to retreat. Varen was gone, dragged off by his own men, broken and burned. The field was quiet again, save for the crackling of dying runes. Kaelric stood. "Medic," he roared. "Get to him. Now." He turned back, brushing sweat-matted hair from Mireth's forehead. "You're going to live." Mireth's eyes closed slowly, a peaceful sort of surrender. "I can," he breathed, "do that, if it means I can be just a person, not a vessel, not a curse, just me." Kaelric squeezed his hand. "You can be anything you want. You earned that." Mireth's last whisper before slipping into unconsciousness was barely a breath. "I just want to be ordinary." Kaelric stood over him, sword in one hand, blood running down the other, and for once, there was no war cry, no rage, no fire, only a quiet vow. "You'll be free, even if I have to burn the world to give it to you." The wind carried away the ashes of the beast, and the man who had once been a whore, a vessel, a weapon, slept like he had never known pain. Chapter 29, A Whore No More. The window overlooked the northern cliffs, where crows used to gather at dusk. Now the sky was clean. The smoke of war had lifted. The capital still bore its wounds, but the bones of the kingdom were beginning to knit. Inside the quiet stone cabin just beneath the Blackrock Keep, Mireth stretched slowly, painfully, fingers splayed out over sun-warmed bedsheets. His breath no longer tasted of iron. His limbs ached, but with life. His skin no longer bore the shimmer of volatile pheromones that once made wolves drool and break. Only the faint, honest scent of an ordinary Omega lingered around him now. For the first time he was safe to touch, and no one had touched him. He stood carefully, wrapping a loose robe around himself. His steps were hesitant, but not fearful. A mirror stood propped in the corner. He'd avoided it for days, afraid of what he'd see. Now he looked. Gone were the black veins of corruption. His pupils had returned to their natural hue, soft violet without the predator's edge. His scent gland, once swollen and volatile, now rested dormant beneath a silk wrap. He looked like a person, not a vessel, not a weapon, not a whore. He whispered to the reflection, "So this is what normal feels like." A knock. He turned. Kaelric entered without ceremony, his black coat dusted with ash and wind, the silver trim now royal, though he still wore it like armor. Behind him, Mireth glimpsed a flicker of a different world. Men building scaffolds, training soldiers, carrying scrolls. Rebirth. Kaelric's gaze swept over him, paused. Then he exhaled slowly. "You're walking again," he said, voice low. "You sound disappointed," Mireth said, tipping his head. "Hoped I'd stay in bed forever, so you could keep feeding me soup and guilt?" Kaelric didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "I don't feel guilty." "You should," Mireth replied breezily. "You didn't even touch me once. Not even when I was dying." Kaelric arched a brow. "You were screaming in pain. I was also lonely." Kaelric stepped inside and shut the door behind him. "I didn't come here to spar." Mireth gestured toward the small table set beside the hearth. "Then you came to confess? Or propose?" Kaelric moved past him, brushing Mireth's shoulder lightly. The touch was brief, casual, but Mireth's skin burned beneath it. The remnants of instinct, of memory. "No," Kaelric said. "I came to offer you a job." Mireth blinked. "That's a first." Kaelric unrolled a parchment and laid it across the table. "The council's forming a new intelligence division. We need someone who understands both the old ways and how people lie." Mireth moved slowly to join him. "You want me to spy. I want you to survive," Kaelric said, gaze steady. "And I want you to do it with your head, not your body." Mireth touched the edge of the parchment. It was signed already. The position was real. "Strategic Intelligence Officer," Mireth read aloud, then glanced at Kaelric. "Bit of a mouthful." "Which you'll find appropriate," Kaelric replied dryly. Mireth laughed, felt foreign and sharp. "Are you giving me this because you trust me? Or because you want to keep me close?" Kaelric met his gaze. "Both." Silence stretched. Comfortable, then not. Mireth turned away, walking back to the mirror. "You know," he said, loosening his robe slightly, letting it slide off one shoulder. "I still remember how to make men look at me like they want to die." Kaelric didn't move. "You don't need to prove anything." "I want to." He turned, now dressed in a dark violet tunic that clung to his waist and showed too much skin. His hair was slicked back. His lips tinted the soft color of berries. His scent, though faint, was deliberately stirred, like a memory someone tried not to taste. Kaelric's jaw clenched. "Well?" Mireth asked, stepping closer. "You used to flinch when I came too close." Do I still scare you? No, Kaelric said. Mireth stopped a breath away. Do I tempt you? Kaelric looked at him for a long time. Too long. I said no. You're lying, Mireth said. He reached up and traced Kaelric's collar, brushing his fingers against the fastenings, the edge of his throat. You always lie when you want something. Kaelric caught his wrist, but he didn't push it away. I want a kingdom that survives this winter, Kaelric said, voice rough. I want wolves that don't kneel to false gods or corrupted wombs. I want you alive and free. That's not love. No, Kaelric said. It's something older. Mireth stepped back, a strange smile curling his lips. Kaelric, tell me truthfully, now that I'm not a whore, not a god's bride, not even a walking bomb, am I finally the kind of person you could want? Kaelric picked up the wine goblet from the table. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a sip, then turned away toward the window. Mireth sighed, letting his tunic fall back into place. Coward. Kaelric's voice drifted back, amused and sharp. Shut up, he said. Put your clothes on. The council wants to meet their new spymaster. Mireth grinned. My king. Chapter 30. Open the door or I will. The palace had been quiet for hours. Even the guards had learned to soften their steps around the new Wolf King's wing. No one knew exactly how to treat him. Kaelric, the warhound turned monarch, the rebel who tore down gods and rebuilt the kingdom with bloodied hands. Only one soul in the castle walked like they still owned every corridor. Mireth. His boots were soft-soled, his stride unhurried, the hem of his dark velvet robe dragging like smoke behind him. The chill of night curled through the hallways, but his skin was warm, freshly bathed, still glowing faintly from oils he didn't need to wear but did anyway, for old habits or old ghosts. At the end of the corridor, 2 silver inlaid doors loomed, Kaelric's private chamber, the one no one entered unless summoned. Mireth stopped before them and looked up at the silent wood. The last few weeks had been an exquisite sort of torment. Kaelric had named him strategic advisor to the crown, given him chambers 3 doors down, and sat beside him at every war meeting. He even smirked sometimes, smirked, as if they hadn't bled for each other. But Kaelric had not touched him. Not once. He'd brushed fingers across a map, handed him a goblet, rested a firm hand between Mireth's shoulder blades once when guiding him through a hostile crowd. But no more. And Mireth had grown tired of pretending it didn't bother him. So tonight he chose silk. Not the suggestive kind that reeked of desperation, but the kind that flowed like moonlight and made him look like something half-remembered from a dream, the kind Kaelric had once feared touching. He raised a hand and knocked, lightly, not like a courtier, not like a servant. No answer. He leaned his weight against the door, his forehead resting against the cool wood. His voice was low when he spoke, not seductive, not mocking. Honest. You're not asleep. Still nothing. I know your steps, Kaelric, he whispered. I know when your shoulders stiffen, even if the rest of you is ice. A beat. I know you're there. Silence. But behind the wood, there was a shift, a shadow moving, breath held. Mireth smiled, faint and sad. I'm not here to break rules. Not anymore. I'm not that boy you once dragged bleeding from a temple. The one who thought if he flirted hard enough, he might get someone to stay. He touched the handle. I'm not asking you to love me. Another pause. I'm asking if you still want me. His hand curled tighter. Because I've only ever had one truth, Kaelric. I wanted you. I wanted the you who bled for me, who said nothing and did everything. And I know you. You think you're protecting me by keeping away. You think if you never touch me, it means you're better than the men who used to. A breath escaped him, shaky. But I've never wanted to be protected from you. Still no response. Mireth let out a soft, bitter laugh. Gods, you are infuriating. Fine. He stepped back and squared his shoulders. I'll ask once. Just once. Then I'll leave you alone. His voice dropped to a whisper. Open the door or I will. No sound. A long second passed. Then, click. The door creaked inward half an inch. A single line of golden firelight spilled across the dark hallway, brushing the silk at Mireth's ankles. The scent of cedar smoke drifted from within. No words greeted him, but a hand, broad and scarred, reached through the gap and flicked the door wider. Kaelric stood shirtless by the hearth, back turned, the muscles of his shoulders tense with something caught between restraint and surrender. He didn't look over. He didn't speak. He just lifted one hand, slow, deliberate, and patted the empty space beside him on the bed. An invitation, not a command, not a prize. Mireth's breath hitched. He stepped inside, closed the door, and as the lock clicked softly behind him, he murmured with a grin, "You finally dare to touch me, don't you?" Kaelric didn't answer, but his arms opened, and this time, Mireth walked into them without flinching.